All right.
What's up, Warriors? Welcome back to the Battlefield of the Mind. I'm Rick, creator of the Warriors Way mindset, and it's my honor today to be with Dr. Thomas Lodi. And we're getting into already good conversation. So some of you guys don't know, when we're talking before, it's getting awesome. And so when great minds meet, we're having a good time. So we're talking about something that people won't understand. And we got into Socrates. We started getting into the Solomon or biblical element of some form of surrender. And I want to keep going with this right now because you are making good points. And if you want to reiterate again and then I can jump back in, that would be really cool.
Sure. And by the way, thank you for having me on your show. It's fantastic. I love it. Um, well, what we, as I said, we were talking about Socrates, who said, he knew that he knew nothing, so he went to the Oracle of Delphi and he asked who the wisest person on earth was, so that he could go study from them. And the Oracle said, "It's you, Socrates." He said, "That's impossible because I know nothing." So he spent his entire life trying to find someone who knew something. So he would question, and his method of the dialogue that occurred from that is called Socratic dialogues. And if you ever read it, you'll see that he asks the question perfectly, and therefore it elicits the perfect answer. But in the end, anybody he interviewed, um, from academicians to all the great scholars of that era, had to admit they don't know. We all get to a point in our explanation of whatever it is we think we know. We get to a point where there's assumptions we've made that we did and that we don't know. And then I just likened that to when Solomon said that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God, and I see that as not fear, but rather acceptance of God's omniscience and omnipotence, and that He's running the show. And once that happens, I think now you're in a position to live your life. But as long as you think you're in control, you're going to be miserable because you're not. When we leave our parents' homes, we've basically, at the age of 18, we've basically been given two instructions. You must predict what's going to happen, and then you must be able to control it, neither of which are possible. I had an uncle, and he was kind of my mentor, and he'd come to visit, and I'd say, "How long are you staying, John?" He goes, "You're asking me to predict the future again. I'm just not good at that." So I loved it. He was kind of he definitely was a modern day Socrates.
I love it. There's so many things I think that what I do you'll enjoy. Maybe the way I do it. What I do is I translate, and I use discernment's my gift. And so like I'll translate what you're saying. And so I loved when I was going through Socrates stuff. And one thing that actually gave me a lot of reassurance in my own writing was I would deep dive into topics even before I would read some of these philosophers. And then I would find that the answer I got jammed up, like this is as far as I could go. And then I would later read 2 months later, Socrates stopped at the same spot. And I'm like, I must be onto something here.
Exactly.
This seems to be this is going the right direction. But there's something to the Socratic method, and especially, let me just tell you, anybody who has ever tried this, I don't know if you've given the Socratic method a go in conversations, but let me just tell you how easy it is to screw that up. Because if you start asking the questions the wrong way, it just makes everybody mad.
Right.
So I learned that the hard way, going, well, let me ask as though I know nothing. Why is this? And why is this? And then people go like, because you're an asshole and I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, well, that didn't work out. So I have to start asking questions differently, changing my cadence, changing the conversation. But the concept of you are the wisest man in the world because you have the humility to believe you are not. And to be able to say, like, I know nothing, how can I be the wisest? That humility makes you open to all information, which makes you now the wisest. But those who feel like I need to control what people are allowed to think about me, what they're allowed to say about me, what they need to know about me, how they're allowed to see me, and what they need to have their opinion of me be based on the narrative I create for them. These people who think they control everything, or they're the center of everything, seem to be the furthest behind on their own ascent into some sort of enlightenment. And so having humility of like, as much as there is to know, I know like nothing. So please, I am open to more. And that humility makes you the wisest.
Right.
and then being able to have the control element. And this is why you said those who seek will find. Well, if you have the humility to say, I know nothing and I'm open to go, I notice the further out somebody goes and the further in somebody goes, they seem to find God.
Yeah, yeah.
Like your Lee Strobels and the people who are like, I'm going to, as an atheist, I am going to disprove this God nonsense. And it seems like these people who go on the journey to go, I'm either going to go further out into the galaxies or I'm going to go further into biology. Either way, the further in you go or the further out you go, you end up going, it seems like there had to be God. It seems like it had to be.
No, and you know that's beautiful. You know, there's an old expression: humility knoweth itself not. Right? You know, the minute you know you're humble, you're not humble. but but the but like I think what you were saying and the way I hear it is that if you're not truly asking the question, you'll never hear it because you already think you know it. Like if your cup is full, you can't fill it up, and so that's really what it is. And like for example, going out in the cosmos. Well, you know, I looked at it a little bit because I talk about energy equals life equals health and all that sort of thing. So, and I realized that the entire universe is a game of it's a dance of energy exchange, and supernovas are producing hundreds of galaxies on one explosion, and in the middle of every middle-sized and large galaxy is something called a black hole where things go and they don't exist anymore. And so that's the cycle. And then we come down here to the biosphere, and that's what we're doing, exchanging energy. So whatever niche you're in, like a frog does really best in the pond, and the polar bear on the equator, on the North Pole, not the equator. So that niche in which you're in is a place where you can exchange energy. So whatever you eat, and really it comes down to humans or creatures are doing two things fundamentally. That is getting energy and becoming an energy source, and secondly, procreating. So it's eating and sex. It's bizarre as that sounds. Um, so, and you become an energy source. The problem with humanity, I see, is that no matter how you look at us, whether it's biblical in the very conservative sense or biblical like thinking. Wait, what did they mean in Genesis when they said in those days there were giants? And what did they mean and we created man in our image? And what did they mean by in those days the sons of God, the gods, found that the daughters of men were fair and born out of them were the men of renown. We kind of skip over those parts because we don't really. All the libraries have been gone. They burned all it. We don't know our true past. And the other thing about the real strict biblical understanding or belief, when they say 7 days, God created everything in 7 days. Remember, day one was let there be light, and that was day one. Day two, he separated the firmament, the waters from above and below. Day three, he created the earth. Now, our definition of a day is one revolution on its axis. Right? So Mars has a little bit longer day. Mercury has a shorter day. So since the Earth didn't exist on day one and day two, we really don't know the length of time of what was meant by day. So those 6 days that occurred, we have no idea of time in that. And it's impossible to know. So no one should ever say, well, no, it all started. I don't know. What do people say that are strictly thinking in terms of our current understanding of time with the Bible? They think it's about the year 6,000 or something, right?
I've heard a few different things where they say like they were documenting for about 6,000 years.
Yeah.
So they say like that's when it started. And there's also like it probably goes back to the time of like when the flood happened. Yeah. And so they started documenting from that point forward. And then the beginning of it was written by Moses. And so like he's got to go back through his story to go back and get like what was the story for that and how do we get all the way back to Noah and then what happened before Noah, and it's very confusing. So like, there's a lot of like gaps in the story, and you're not wrong with Nephilims, and those are the stories of Hercules, and these stories of
Exactly.
great giants of like angel, half man, and there's a whole lot of stuff that's like what's going on in this time, and there's a lot of maybe it could be with all this. Maybe it's angels, or maybe it's
Right.
aliens, or maybe it's something else. I don't know. Or maybe we are part of an experiment or a petri dish. I don't know. Like, it's not my job to know that. I don't know. And again, Socrates. When it comes to that, I know nothing. I have no idea.
Right.
But I
No.
can see there were stories of giants, and there were stories of Nephilims, and there were stories of these things. And, they turned into those mythologies and those things of like great renown. And there's also very interesting things when it comes to time that I've seen played with stories, which just creates like maybe plausible, no way can be proven, but plausible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Right. Right. Uh, I have a problem with time because, um, in one sense, it doesn't exist. It's only a concept. If because I think about when did now begin, right? It didn't, and it will never end. And since that's true, then there's never going to be then, and there never was a was. It's always been now, and it's eternal. But and then like I think I did a show for New Year's. It was I posted it. I was just talking about what are we doing, what are we celebrating, and what New Year's resolution should we make. The bottom line of that is you only need to make one resolution, as far as I'm concerned, biologically, and that is go to sleep early. And I explain why, and then, but other than that, we were talking about New Year's. Well, the Chinese have this New Year, and then we're all January 1st, and then Thai people have another New Year. So basically, we have to understand that there is no time. Like for example, where are you right now? You're near the mid around
I'm
Chicago,
Central Time. Yeah, we're near
right?
Chicago.
Right.
Central Time.
So you're what time is it? 10 for you?
It's
11?
almost noon right now.
Right. So here it's almost 10. What does that mean? Right. In Thailand it's what 11 a.m. p.m. So that's all clocks and calendars. And the point I try to make to people is that it's only now. And here's the interesting thing about now. The only thing you can think about is what you think will happen, what you think did happen. Okay, and remember, all you have is a memory of a vague piece of memory of your perception of what happened at that time, right? And the future is a guess. What's left? Should be, could be, should have been, could have been, maybe, and if. None of those are. So the future isn't nothing. So what is real now? But here's the trick. You can't think about now because when you're thinking about a past event. The only thing you can do with now is experience it. So the price of admission is your mind. And when you get into now, that's where God lives, because God lives not in should be's and could be's and could have beens and will be, but God lives in now, and it's eternal. And when you enter that, as I said, the price of admission is your mind. So you'll never, the you that you think you are will not know that you're there, because we identify with our biology and our personalities, our psychology. But our mind cannot experience now. Therefore, what does that mean? That means everything that I would think about is an illusion, right? Because you can only experience now. So if everything, and this is what the Hindus refer to as Maya, the great temptress, right? The illusion. And because I spent a few years in India and lived on an ashram before I came back to the U.S. I came back not only because I had to get a job. I couldn't stay in the ashram after 2 years because I realized I wasn't ready. And I went around the world. I didn't want to come back to America, but I said I couldn't work. They wouldn't give me you had to have work permit. So I came back to America to get a job, and I got stuck for 40 years. Turned out to be a doctor. I said, doctor? I would never have chosen that, which is another reminder that who's running the show, right? I never decided. because I was reading Herbert M. Shelton when I was 14, so I never learned the wrong way. I learned from the beginning what is food, you know, and I learned that's what I knew. So like today when I go and I see people take their family to fast food restaurants, and I'm thinking, wow, wow, because they really don't know. How do they not know? Anyway, I got off subject, yeah. Anyway, so I was living in India and then traveling, just hitchhiking around the world. Back in those days, it was a different world. Um, if you had long hair, it was like a symbol. And wherever I'd go, I'd meet other people. I'd stay with them, and I just went from country to country. I remember hitchhiking in Switzerland, and this band stopped and said, they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Paris." They said, "We're going to Copenhagen." I said, "Okay, let's go." So it was great, and that's. But after a couple of years of that, I realized I got to get a job. So I came back to America, wound up being a psychologist, and well, it conflicted so much with what I learned in India, because in psychology, Western psychology, um, we learn to fix the mind in one way or another. And in the East, they're saying, no, no, the mind is the problem. You got to transcend it. And it's a completely different paradigm. And it's very interesting. And then, if you're a psychologist and you look at, I like I think it was B.F. Skinner or Watson, one of them said, I think it was Skinner, the mind, if it does exist, is a byproduct of behavior. I mean, which is a bizarre thing. You have to have a mind to have asked the question, yet you can't say that that's not true, because if you act as if you're happy every day, guess what happens? You wind up being happy, right? And when I would work with people, I would find that actually behavioral therapy worked the best. It's called contingency management, and then what happens is the mind follows it. It's very strange. So, and I'd say that 99.9% of my work is teaching people how what you and I were speaking about is ultimately, if you want to get through this, you've got to surrender, and it doesn't mean give up. It
No.
means accept. So that once a person does, they're healed. I mean, actually, they don't need me anymore. But my job is to get people to understand what I just said. That's
Hey,
my job.
Doc, is it okay if I try and translate? So I can
Please.
see your brilliance when you start dancing, so I like it. But I'm going to translate a little bit because you did some very cool topics and you jump between, and I'm going to
Okay.
try and grab some of them because this time one is fascinating. And you said some very cool things that I don't want it to be skipped. And when you talked about God's days, we use terminology like now or soon, as though that's a time, and those are just terms to represent an idea. And we get caught up in those. I think it's very interesting. I remember I was watching like The Chosen or something, and Peter's talking to Jesus or Yeshua, whatever um, translation you use, but he's talking to him, and he's like, "Well, when's God going to do all this stuff?" And he says, "Soon." And he's like, "Oh, good. That should be a few days." He's like, "I don't think you understand the concept of soon. It's not Earth days like this. It's going to be when that happens. It's going to be when this happens, but it's not on an Earth schedule. It's on a relative time schedule that we don't have access to." And so, the concept of time for God is different than the concept of time for us. And so when God created light, let's just go with, let's say he made the Big Bang. Well, God created light. He Big Banged, right?
Right.
So let's go with, all right. That could be millions of years. This is millions of years. We don't know what a day for God means. This is
Right.
something very different. And it also transcends anything that I would be able to understand also. I can't conceive. So it's no different than you trying to explain astrophysics to termites. Like, they won't get it, and even if they know there is, they don't get it, and that's fine. But now or soon, like even the terms will say, like, today is yesterday's tomorrow. So there is no now. And even if you think of now, well, it's already past. And so I wrote something the other day just on this topic where I watch people when they're working through depression and anxiety. And it's a little Lao Tzu-ish, but it's a different, where I said, we spend our present minutes in pasts that are no longer happening and futures that will never happen. And our days are a documentary of us watching time disappear.
Mm, mm.
And what we're
Very good.
doing is just we're living in the moment where the moment is missed because we're thinking about things I haven't processed enough yet from the past and worrying about things that'll never happen.
Right.
So my right now is caught up in different times. And this is where I train people, like, you are not wrong. Most of what I do falls more into the CBT element of things because it's had a long standing, but I still add, neurolinguistics, and I still add other tricks in there to make it so I can get to, now let's make it last through behavioral change and apply a new belief system that makes it so the longevity of your identity actually matches who you believe you are, and not just trying to change that without getting rid of the reason there was a problem.
Right.
And that's where the modern day Western psychology is starting to get into validation and symptoms, and just giving a pill for your symptom instead of getting to the core to remove the dysfunction of that person. And that time element mixed in with just the behavioral element has been a very interesting perspective of worlds where you're caught in depression because you're stuck in the past, and you're caught in anxiety because you're in the future. And right now is just a documentary of you just having time just float right by you,
Yeah, I love
and
that.
you're missing all of it.
Yeah. I've always thought that in my second to the last moment of my life, will what I will say is, I blew it. I didn't show up. God gave me the, and I wasn't there. We're not here now ever unless we meditate, right? And the word for meditation, mindfulness. Again, that's the opposite of the truth. It's mindlessness. And,
Correct.
it's interesting in the field I'm in, which is oncology. It's tumors are the fruit on the tree, but the roots are psychospiritual. And you call the tree doctor because everybody that eats this poison apple tree dies, and so the tree doctor comes and he cuts all the apples off. Well, are you done? No. Next fall you're going to have a new harvest. So it's not the apples, and so that's why I don't recommend surgery. In fact, I do the opposite. I suggest people don't get surgery unless it's life threatening, unless because it's going to block a vital function, or it's excruciatingly painful,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's about it. Otherwise, taking it away not only doesn't stop the problem, it actually, we now know that it stimulates growth of more. So you unless you get to the root, and just to give you an example of one, is we've noticed over the years that women who have left-sided CFCs, chronically fermenting cells, aka that zodiac sign between Gemini and Leo. By the way, and I'm sure I've said this many times, the reason I don't like that word Cancer is because it is a zodiac sign. Or associated with the crab, but it has nothing to do with our biological processes. And on top of it, Rockefeller and his subsequent generations have made sure that when we hear that word, we hear that we're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And they just took away your future. They just made everything on your agenda irrelevant. And there's a sense there, and I've seen people, I work with these people, there's a sense of, talk about a PSTD. And that's what they want, because fear disconnects your prefrontal lobe. So it's an emotional frontal lobotomy. You can no longer make reason, right? We're going to cut this off and that off, okay, and then we're going to burn you and then give you some poison, okay. So, and that's what they want. I call it the standard of scare, and they call it the
It's
standard of care.
it's
But
true. It's
that's
the
fear,
fastest way to control people. Also, is to just add fear.
right? To
If you
create
want,
more
if you want
fear.
people to relinquish any type of freedom or relinquish power or relinquish any type of autonomy, just add a lot of fear, and
Exactly.
people will eventually start making very irrational decisions. And even the indoctrination of people is generally going to be routed in propaganda of fear. This is how, like, you saw what happened during the time now with COVID and those things where you saw people get extremely polarized. The same thing with Nazis. Germany was a very democratic place before he started doing the propaganda. These were like, you would watch the documentary of how you could change a law-abiding police officer, and then with just a handful of years with a propaganda of fear, you can turn that person into a man who's doing public executions on a pregnant woman. And like, how did the law-abiding good police officer turn into an executioner of pregnant women? The protector turned into the executioner. How did this happen? Fear, 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 fear. And this is something that was disappointing, I think, is watching how, like you said, the way the system is obviously designed for control by using a system that is subconscious to make you afraid of everything. So you start making irrational decisions. I was watching the polarization and lost good friends to fear propaganda that I knew the language for. So I said, that's not real. That's not really there. It's almost like if I said, Thomas, the boogeyman is going to fucking get you. Right. And you're like, the boogeyman? What do you mean? Do you not know the fucking boogeyman? Oh, you don't know. And then I have to go into boogeyman conversations, and you need a boogeyman lock, and it's boogeyman insurance, and I need to get the boogeyman stuff. And I'm going, that's not a thing, man. I don't think that the boogeyman's really there. And like, if you don't believe in the fucking boogeyman, you're a fucking piece of shit. And I hope you fucking die by the boogeyman. And you're like, what is happening to you, man? Like, I don't think that thing's there. And then later on it comes out, they're like, yeah, there actually wasn't a boogeyman, but all of you guys, we won't talk about it. It's like, wait a second, we had people dying and friends were lost and marriages end and people lost their businesses from the boogeyman, just to be like, yeah, our bad, that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah. Right. Well, no, and in terms of linguistics, I in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and God spoke the universe into existence. And so we have to understand that sound is the fundamental vibration of reality, and it's even strong. It precedes or holds up electromagnetic frequencies because light came after, but again, it was spoken into existence. And so words are very, very important. So I make sure that when I'm speaking to someone, first of all, we both speak in the same language, and then that we have the same definition of the terms. Because if we don't, then we're really not communicating. And that's one reason why I hate idioms. Because when you use an idiom, the person who learned that idiom learned it in whatever it means to them, at whatever age they were. And then I say it, what it means to me. So we haven't communicated. Right? I'm not really, so I think it's a better mind exercise if you're trying to say something, instead of coming up with an idiom, try to put it in your own words. Describe it as you see it, and then the person will hear it, because they don't hear idioms. But anyway, when it comes into the definition of words, words are basically the scaffolding of our mind, and they define paradigms. And so, for example, I would never use the word pandemic when there wasn't one, right? I would never use the word vaccine when it wasn't. I would never use the word, and I certainly wouldn't use some cute derivative like jab or vax. And by the way, I just want to remind everyone that we didn't ever use that word jab until it became mandatory, and suddenly the BBC, the CNN, everyone jab, 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 jab. Because what is a jab? I jab my friend, haha. Or I go outside and the branch jabs me. A jab is benign. And once they gave us that concept, so it's called linguistic manipulation, and they're very, very good at it. So, and the same thing when it comes to chronically fermenting stuff. Don't use their word. If you don't use that word, you're not playing their game. By the way, Doc, can you cure this? You can only cure what? Diseases, but they don't exist. There is no disease. There's no third party that gets into me, like diabetes got into me. Where is it? In my elbow? But the point is, there is no diabetes. Everything that we call a disease is our body's adaptation to, it's a homeostatic adaptation when its biological needs are not being met. So in other words, I'm eating too much pasta, bread, potato, rice, and cake. I got high glucose. So my body, which was designed by the ultimate reality of everything, which is perfection, knows that too much glucose is going to kill me. So my cells become insulin resistant. They have to. And by the way, the body and nature is not moral. The law of the universe is the law of necessity. Things happen because they must happen. And how do I know that? Because they happen. And that which didn't happen didn't need to happen because it didn't happen. I mean, by definition. But anyway, so our bodies adapt, so they become insulin resistant. If you go to the witches and warlocks in the House of Horrors, they're going to tell you, you have this disease called diabetes, and here's some magic potion to get rid of it. Well, there's no it. All I got to do is stop eating the bread, and then that adaptation is no longer required by my body, and my body will go back to be able to do what it was designed to do, and that is optimal functioning. So we've lost the respect for our body, for nature, and we no longer. First of all, it's it has to do with the allopathic mindset, which says health is impossible and disease is inevitable. Now we grow up with that, and so we get insurance. Why? Because we're planning to get sick, and then now pregnancy has become a disease, so you have to go to the hospital to be born. And then when you're healthy, your mother will take you in for well baby checks. Why would you go to a doctor when you're healthy? And it turns out they give you things that change that. But so we're born in hospitals, we die in hospitals. All the time we're going to hospitals. And the Rockefellers or whoever was behind that was super. It's not human, because it's to be able to know that, well, I got to do this for 20 years. I had to start this. It was this whole thing that brings us to today was so precisely planned out. It was amazing. So anyway, so my point is that we have to be careful about words. I mean, remember Emoto, the guy that would freeze water when you said something or wrote, and he would look at the crystal. And if we I remember seeing a documentary. It was beautiful. It was originally in Russian, but they had but it was just narration, but the original narration was Russian, so I saw it in English. And it's just, I see, if you have anybody can find it, it's called Water. That's it. And it's just beautiful. But anyway, I remember them going to Saint what is it in Rome during St. Peter's? I don't know what it is in Rome, but they went on Easter Sunday, and they got all these big buckets of holy water because they're going to be blessing people. And they took it out of the tap, and then they blessed it. And it was interesting because these guys froze the tap water and then froze the blessed tap water, and the crystals were chaotic, and these were beautiful. And when you realize that our bodies are a minimum 70%, depends on how dehydrated we are, water, that when you say to someone, you're really an asshole, you curse them, you change their body. And if you say, you're fantastic, you're one of the most greatest human beings I've met, or even just, you look great today, or any of those things, this food was wonderful, doesn't matter. You bless people. So it's very, very, we have to understand the power of words. I hate you is more powerful than punching someone. They say the tongue is mightier than the sword, and it is. So the main thing is anybody who's ever sick, please don't use their words. And the last thing you ever want, you got, like, people say, listen, I haven't gotten a biopsy yet. I mean, I haven't seen the doctor yet. I have an appointment with the surgeon, and I said, don't go, because what is the surgeon going to tell you to do? I mean, you have to have an appointment, and then you go to any oncology department in the whole world, because the whole world, it's been taken over. They're going to give you the same opinion. They're all Toyota dealers. None of them are going to talk about BMWs or Chevys or anything. It's going to be a Corolla or whatever they are. But that's what I mean. So if you go to them, what happens is they cast a spell. Did you know that in the Aramaic language, like the New Testament was written in Aramaic language, I think it's the same as Armenian, but the word abracadabra means, as I speak, so I create. And so if you think of a sorcery, black magic, they've always got a particular, a certain garb, whatever that garb is, a long black robe and a hat, and they've got, the setting is perfect. They might have a upside down pentagon, or some sort of thing, candles or whatever they have going on is ritualistic, necessary, and then they read from a book or they know it already and they speak words that happen. So when you go into a hospital and you've got this lump in your breast, or you're having a hard time peeing because you're getting a man and you're getting older, um, and when you go to a hospital, so when you go in there and they've taken a biopsy, when they've taken a biopsy, and you walk in there, here he or she is sitting with their white robe behind the desk with all the degrees of the paper on the wall, and they looking at your information, and they glance up at you and they go, whoa, whatever they say is a curse. And if I had a problem, as much as I know, I would still never go there, because the moment you hear that, it bypasses everything you think you know, and like a screw worm gets into your heart, and you cannot get it out. So I feel like with people, it's almost like I'm trying to perform an exorcism, to get that, and the only thing I can do, the bridge between fear and faith, is knowledge, right? A little kid is afraid of the dark, so you turn the lights on, and you say, "Look around, everything okay?" He goes, "Yeah." And then you turn the lights off. Ah, he cries. You turn the lights back on. Look, go check under the bed. Look in the closet. You do that a few times. Now you turn the light off. He can't see. Now he knows. So once he knows, he's not afraid, and he'll go on. So, um, um, and let me just really quickly explain faith, because people have different definitions.
Well, Dr. Lodi, can I pause you for a second? You're just dropping bombs at random here, and I think people are going to be missing so many of these bombs. You threw in that law of necessity like just willy nilly, and then walked right past it. I'm like, you could do a 2-hour training on this,
Exactly.
and so I'm like, hold on, Doc, you're just dropping bombs here, so. I want to get into, I'll play with the words for a little bit, but I do want to stick with the cancer thing in a second also. It's interesting the way you talk about the abracadabra, the way words work. I also really enjoyed the Alan Watts stuff about how the words are all defined by words, that we created words to tell you what words mean for words' sake. And you're like, these are a very confusing system to try to explain emotions and feelings. Like, they just don't do justice for what it is, but we're using a dictionary that you have to learn words, what they mean, to explain what other words mean, meaning we get to make up what the meaning of words are when everything around you is simply matter. And so we're just creating, like, this means pen, we are on camera, this is microphone, when it's really just matter. And we start creating values and things. And I really am with you. That water documentary was amazing to watch, and I do encourage people to watch it too. It was more than just the blessings of water from just the church or whoever it would be. They would play different music, or they would even write something and put that on the water. So it'd be like, I hate you so much, and just write it and put it on the water and leave it. And then another one, I love you more than anything, and put that on water. And just even the writing would change the way that the water formed. And it was really interesting to watch all the different formations of chaos versus order, and just the way the energy was shared to it. And they did it in a ton of different ways and had very amazing results in different things. And I would tell people to check that out, because that does happen. And so what I'm going to do is give a piece to apply it to reality right now. I have 3 teenage girls here, and let's just say anybody has 3 teenage girls, pray for them, because they don't listen to shit, and doesn't matter how good you are, what you do, they don't listen to shit. And so, the youngest one, bless her little heart, she's in the 13 range, and let's just say 13 is mean. They're just fucking mean to be mean. They're just mean. And nothing's happened. They're just mean. And I would have such an issue with the way she would treat people, little snippy comments and just being not kind. Now, I don't like bully behavior. And so I would also be like, hey, watch your fucking mouth with the way you're talking to your sisters and how you're treating people. If you want me to match your energy, I will. You're being a mean little brat right now. You're being not good to these other people. And I would start creating, you're a bad kid, you're this, you're that. And I would start making that noise towards her, which would create that like dynamic between us, would have that energy, that crystals would change by the way that I would call her something. But then I had to step back out of my own protector element because I had my own pack acting like they're maniacs. And I'm like, wait a second, I have to remember 13 is hard. I have to remember 13 is really difficult. The hormones are spiked through the roof. Everything is changing dramatically. Everything that made sense is gone. Now my friends like boys when it used to be toys, and things make no sense at all anymore. Everything is chaos. I don't understand me. There are now periods I'm having I didn't have before. There's now things, everything's different. Everything is changing and nothing makes sense. I don't look like a woman, but I'm not a girl. Everything's hard. And I'm like, I got to remember 13 is hard. And once I stopped doing the judgment element of like, you're being a little bitch and turn it into 13 is hard. They must be going through a lot right now. And then I showed compassion instead of judgment. The dynamic started to change very quickly. And hopefully the lesson in that is something with like, could be your wife or your husband, could be your kids, could be your damn dog, whatever it is. The energy of what you call it seems to change the DNA of the dynamic. And that's a really cool lesson for people to go, I can apply that now. By your husband's not being an asshole, your husband's hurt. Your wife's not being a bitch, she has an unmet need and it's hard. Like if you just call it something different, we now change the crystals between us. We change the formation of the way we interact. I think it's a really powerful lesson that you're saying. Now you applied that to the medical industry of making it more of a ritual with the robe and the documentation and the plaques on the wall or whatever it would be for my credential to curse thee, and how that can affect to saying you have cancer, you have PTSD, you have depression, you have, or you are this thing, you are ADHD, you are anxiety, you are, and you are bipolar disorder, you are, which is a huge spectrum of where you can fall on. And so people just start looking it up, self-diagnose, and then act accordingly. You have an attachment disorder. And then they start acting accordingly. These are curses. I call them curses all the time. You can see my name is Curse Breaker. And this is because I also see the same thing you see, is that people have cursed people with words, and it creates beliefs that people will live their lives and identity to make sure they are true. Yeah. And I have seen the curses happen. And the words, the power of words is amazing. I don't want people to skip that lesson you just did.
No, you know, when and what you basically just hit it, you nailed it, and that is, when you get diagnosed, you know the word diagnosis, gnosis, Gnosis means to know, you know, and then die, separate and know. So how do you separate and know? So, for example, a 2-year-old looking at a desk that has, pens and a computer and a bottle of water and all this stuff doesn't see that. You know why? Because they don't have the word. They haven't learned the word yet. And there's a story about, I think there were some Native Americans in South America who were standing on a high cliff, and I think Cortez's big ship came in. They didn't see it. They didn't see it until they got off and they started rowing in on little boats. They saw that. They had that concept, because a word is a concept. And remember, here's the interesting thing about a word, and it reminds me of meditation and mantra and all that. The word is the vehicle to get you to a place called the meaning. But once you get the meaning, you leave the word, because you have to it's just a vehicle. Like, for example, when you meditation, when you're doing mantra, you do mantra just to focus your mind. But to get to the place where the mantra has to take you, you have to get rid of it. Now, most Buddhism, they use the mantra of breath. They listen to their breath. And so anyway, it's the meaning, not the word, but the words are important because that's the vehicle. So when someone looks across the desk and says, you have, what they're really saying is, you are now this. So, and what brought this to mind is when people say, listen for it and you'll hear it. Before I was diagnosed, once I was diagnosed, after I was diagnosed, what do you mean? What does that mean? What happened? That means they named, you're no longer Shelley Pierce or Tom Lodi. You are this. Now, let me tell you this. My mother was in the movie industry. She made movies. She was a script supervisor. So she worked with the director every second, changing the script and all that. And they gave her notes to the editors when they did dailies to know what to cut and what not to cut. And so she had to know everybody's line and everything. So, wait, what was my point about that? So in movies, when they're making movies, while they're making a movie, they always take pictures, photographs, and they call them stills. And then at the end, they'll use that for promotion. You see Tom Cruise up there doing this. And, these are called stills. They're snapshots of the movie. Now, if I showed you one still from a movie, could you tell me what the movie's about? No. That's what they do. They now take your entire life and you are this. I'm a cancer patient. No. I'm a cancer survivor. No. None of that. So that's what I mean. If you can't take their words. So I spend all of my time when I'm with patients. I go over labs, of course. And in the end, I tell them, I only do the labs for your sake. So that because you grew up in the world, and doctors think that all this is important. It is, but we really don't know what it means. In fact, we know nothing. And the more I've studied the body, and believe me, I study every day. I can't, I'm like obsessed with learning. So I learn every day so much more and now I've concluded that I know absolutely nothing. Just think about it. 36 septillion chemical reactions, that's 21 zeros, every second in your body. And they're all interrelated because there's too much of this that goes into this cycle. I mean, you cannot, it's an incomprehensible complexity that not even any AI could see it. It's only the divine consciousness, which is the fabric of existence. So it's just, but anyway, so I realized, and 37 million new cells per second. So then I realized I'll never get this. And for example, the concept of balance, homeostasis, and all that, and that's to remain the same, maintain functional integrity in the face of any adverse situation. And we have different levels of it. We have biomechanical. Someone pushes me, my left leg goes out to keep me upright. That's a biomechanical homeostatic response. I'm eating greasy, cheesy pizzas and kebabs and everything, so my arteries get plugged up. The wisdom of my body is I've got to maintain blood flow to all the organs. So how do you maintain blood flow with clogged up pipes? You increase the pressure, right? And so there is a physiological adaptation. And then a biochemical adaptation is all the ones, diabetes, all the things we call diabetes, but they're just adaptive processes. So what's happening to a person, you have to understand that if I do your labs right now, and this goes up and this goes down, which I think is not good, not what we want, I don't realize it was necessary. I mean, I forgot that it's necessary. So what I no longer do is try to think that I've lost, I never really had it, but they tried to get me to believe that I had the power to change nature, and I don't. So, and instead of trying to block the river, ride it, use the power of the river, and that's what I call nature. And so what we don't understand, like I'll give you an example, tumor markers. When they go up, things are bad, right? Maybe. And but remember, there's no good or bad. It's not a moral universe. Because think about it. A wolf eating a rabbit, is that good or bad? Neither. It's necessary, right? And by the way, why did God make Satan? Because God made everything. Why did he make Satan? Well, as Alan Watts would say, you can't have a front without a back. And up doesn't exist without down. So that the phenomenal universe exists in polarities. And without the polarities, it doesn't exist. But here's an interesting thing. If up doesn't exist without down, and down doesn't exist without up, do they exist? Anyway, that's the dual. I didn't mean to get in so deep philosophy. I
We're
was,
we're
I
gonna,
was
we're
trying
gonna
to get
start
to the
getting
point.
too esoteric for people. So
Yeah,
I want to stick with some of the things just for a second. I do want to get into the medical elements of things too, because it is relevant to almost every listener, especially today. Your message needs to be heard clearly, so I want that.
yeah.
But you're not wrong. I want to stick with words for a second, and just like stick with that just for a moment before I go to the next thing. Um, you're right with the words, and people, we are very limited though, and that the language itself is limited. And try to explain an emotion to somebody, you can see how difficult that is. Our bodies don't give us credit for how big we are inside with the way that we feel and love and hate and hurt and think and all of the feelings and stuff that we have. The emotions, the words don't quantify it. And they try and make clever tools and stuff to try and say, pick your pain. Which feeling is your feeling today? And they'll make feeling wheels, and they'll make tools to try to articulate as best we can with this very limited tool the vastness of all of our feelings, or the vastness of the multiplications of ourselves. And so we're limited. I say these things with like, try to explain a color to a blind man. Tell me what red is if you've never seen anything. I mean, good luck. You're
Right.
limited. The words won't be able to articulate the experience, and like even the vastness of how much knowledge there is to know, you can never write or never use words enough to explain. It can only be experienced. How much water is in the ocean? We can try to explain, but you can't understand. How many stars are there? There's billions upon billions of galaxies. Well, how many stars and galaxies? Billions. You're like, well, fuck. I can't even quantify what it means. It's just sound at this point that means nothing. And so it's interesting that we use these words to try to diagnose, and diagnose becomes beliefs. You're not wrong, and I think the what you're getting at is a concept I speak of often, which is challenge everything. You need to challenge it. Just because somebody said words to you doesn't mean you have to be the words. Somebody said some noise, but you do not have to become the noise. And this is where people are trying to curse others by, you are stupid, you are dumb, you are sick, you are broken, you are defective, you are diseased, you are. And the curses that get put on people last for generations, because now it's hereditary, because now you're using the same words to curse your family. Well, my father was an alcoholic, so it must be in the family. Well, that's a learned behavior that he was doing to control coping, because he wasn't good at grieving. And he just didn't understand how to get through denial. So he went to distraction, and that's the way he got through things. And you're like, well, we can train denial, bargaining, anger, sadness to get to acceptance. So you don't have to go into distraction to get away from the war with what is.
Mm.
Now that you're trained, I don't need addiction. And it
Okay.
keeps working, because we keep beating alcoholism, and we beat very difficult addictions over and over again by getting into the training of rewiring your beliefs around grief, training you to grieve, and use different words to explain your identity based on the belief systems that you live through. You are right. The cognitive behavioral element is correct. And it's not being taught that way, because it's much easier to just go, here you go, take a whole bunch of these.
Mm.
Like, here you go, take a bunch of this. And don't worry about going through grieving. Don't worry about learning. Don't worry about knowing thyself. Don't worry about understanding and more information. Don't worry about even going into some sort of exposure to make it so the dark now becomes okay. We're not doing any of that. Just take these pills and then you won't feel.
Mm.
Okay, well, that sounds really nice. I'd love to numb it. Give me something to numb this. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
With this being said, the diagnosis becoming the symptoms, or why I give you medication. I'm going to be open. My stepfather he's had myeloma, and so he has bone cancer. And we changed his diet, we changed his lifestyle, and he beat it. He went into full, it all regressed down. He was he was cancer free for a long time, but they know this one comes back, and it just reared its ugly head this month. Now it came back. Now, of course, they're saying the numbers go up, and what do they say first thing? We need to poison you right away. We need to start chemotherapy immediately. I do want your opinion of since we just got this diagnosis. I know certain foods and certain things need to be removed because they really stimulate that need in the body. You said that that part where you talked about the adaptation of unmet needs, that there's no disease. There's something the body is trying to adapt to. And I said, I know one for sure is processed sugar. You need to stop that one right away. He's like, so eating like 3 slices of pie, that's not good. I'm like, unless you want bigger cancer, don't give it more fuel. And so I know those are there. What advice do you have to say, well, I wouldn't go the direction of chemotherapy, but I would go the direction of? And what would your advice be for that?
Excellent. Okay. Well, first of all, understand there's no such thing as multiple myeloma or lymphomas or leukemias or breast cancers. There's no such thing as it. It's not a thing. Every what they call diagnosis, like they nailed you. This is what you are, and the rest of your life you're this. But those are names they'll put on it. And usually, like in solid tumors, they take a piece of the tissue. They got to do a biopsy. You want to screw with the doctor's head? Refuse a biopsy, because then he doesn't have a word for you, and he can't put you in his algorithm, and he'll go, and then they can't deal with it. So they get this, and guess what they do? The pathologist looks under the microscope, and he describes what he sees, and it's in the duct, or it went through the duct, and it's carcinoma, which just means what they call a neoplasm of organs that arose out of one part of the embryo. Embryo has 3 parts: an outer, inner, and middle, like everything. And so the outer part, ectoderm. So all of those are called carcinomas. The middle part, the mesoderm, all of those are called sarcomas. I mean, it's just, so in other words, he described what he saw, and that's a diagnosis. Well, wait a minute. If that's a diagnosis, it hasn't told me the 2 most important things I need to know. How did I get it, and how do I get rid of it? And if it doesn't tell you that, what use is it? Of none. It's zero. You could have called it an apple, because it doesn't matter what you called it, and there's no it. Okay, so anyway, I like, my kids used to come home and they'd be crying, about somebody called them a name, and so I said, what if they called you a banana? Would you have gotten angry? Would you have felt bad? And they said, and then I go into what was their relationship with that word, and then anyway. So with regarding multiple myeloma or any condition, okay, so remember, what we call cancer is chronically fermenting cells. And the reason they're fermenting is that they've lost the ability to use oxygen with glucose to make energy, which is extremely efficient. 1 glucose, 6 molecules of oxygen go into the mitochondria. You get 38 energy packages, ATP. So 1 glucose to 38, pretty good. Now, when you lose enough mitochondria, now the cell has to survive, because remember, if a cell doesn't have energy, it can't even maintain its sodium potassium pumps to give it existence. So the first thing it does is it gets energy some way. So when you mess with its energy, that's all it does. So it goes into the only other choice it has, and that is fermentation. But the fermentation of glucose only gives you 2 energy packages called ATP. Okay, so out of glucose, you get either 38 or you get 2. Wow. So that means that so now in order to survive with that, because that's a big difference, it needs 19 times more fuel. The 2 times 19 is 38, right? 38 ATP. So you need 19 times more to maintain your energy needs. So what happens is it sends a signal to the nucleus to turn down this gene, turn up this gene, just so your expression, because remember, every cell of your body could clone your whole body. But what your liver cells are doing is they've silenced everything but liver stuff. Your kidney cells have silenced everything but kidney stuff. You understand? So that's called differentiation. Okay, so um, when the cell has to change operating systems, I got to go from using, they call it oxidative phosphorylation. Now I got a fermentation. It's a different. It's like having a Mac and a Windows. It's a different operating system. So what it does, retrograde, goes back and you turn this gene on. They're not mutations. What they call oncogenes are genes that are turned on that will maintain efficient survival under this new operating system. That's what it's done. So that's what it is. So what it is an adaptive process to maintain functional integrity. Now, um, it's nothing more than that. So, and that's what anyway. So if you, and I don't care where it starts, the elbow, blood, whatever. It's still the same process in order to give it the word cancer. Anyway, so if you do chemotherapy, and I've studied this thoroughly, and I think I have one presentation on it. But if you study chemotherapy, what in the oncology journals, because who else is going to study it? And Big Pharma supported it. They tell you that yes, this stuff, if you give a high enough dose, will get rid of all of the mature cells, but it has no effect on the stem cells, the cancer stem cells, the chronically fermented, the CFC stem cells. And what is it that can metastasize? Only stem cells. So, and what does the chemo do? It enhances each of the 6 steps necessary for metastasis. So does radiation. So it only what it does is it gets rid of the primary. And this is they say this in the journals. This blows me away. It gets rid of the primary, but it ensures metastasis, which is why I'm in remission. A year and a half later, 5 years later, oh, okay. So because they never got to the root. So anyway, when I look at with someone who has like he was saying multiple myeloma is what you would call it's a chronically fermenting plasma cell, and whereas a leukemia, might have a chronically fermenting lymphocyte, or whereas a breast will have a chronically fermenting duct, right? But it's still the same biology. The only difference between all of them is the cell type and what it normally does. So liver cells do different than things in kidney cells, but the fundamental biology is the same. So therefore, I always say, okay, we're missing something. There is whatever it brought this about in the first place has not been eliminated, right? And what is it? Well, we live in the 21st century, so a better question is what is it? What wasn't it? Right? So anyway, so basically it's toxins. When enough toxins get in there, they start to kill off the mitochondria, and that's the beginning of it. So the first thing you got to do is start with the head, and then you get rid of any potential cause. That's the mouth. You got to go in the mouth. And people, the importance of the mouth, I cannot overstate. In fact, you know that in the research, which is not really good, that well done, 80 to 90% of all systemic, I hate using words, but what they use, I call it adaptive physiology, not pathology. It's adaptive physiology, right? So what the body's doing, it's not wrong. Pathology means it's wrong. It's not wrong. It's doing the right thing. In fact, it's not doing the right thing. It's doing the only thing it could. Remember, the law of the universe is necessity. It's doing what's necessary. So, so I have to go in there. So anyway, so I look at the mouth. All right, I send them to a biological dentist, and we've got to do. You know what a biological dentist does? They look at your cranial bones. They can feel if they're in place, because if your cranial, you come through your mother's cervix, you got your head. You have 7 bones. You come out like a cone head. Then they eventually settle, and then they fuse, and they don't always fuse right. Maybe a little bit, millimeter. That changes your job, your bite. Your bite is the top of your cervical spine, which is the beginning of your whole spine. It's C1. I mean, it's axis on top of atlas. That affects the entire spinal cord, which is your entire nervous system, including your autonomic nervous system. So how important is that? Wow. And that, so they look at the cranium, they look at your breathing, they look at your airway, your tongue position, and then cavitations, root canals, all that stuff. So you've got to make sure your mouth has been thoroughly evaluated. And what they do is they call this 3D cone beam CT, and it's done, and it's not a lot of radiation. It's not like a full CT. It's just here, so it's fine. But then they look at it and they can tell if you have a cavitation. That means above your tooth. So if you went to the dentist and he pulled the tooth, like for some reason everybody gets their wisdom teeth pulled. It's crazy. It's our third molar. Yeah, we actually could use it since we're supposed to grind. And so when they pull a tooth, what they don't do in regular dentistry is they don't take out the ligament. Bones are connected to bones by ligaments. Muscles are connected to bones by tendons. Okay, so there's a periodontal ligament between the tooth and the jaw. So when they pull the tooth, they don't touch that. They leave it there. Then they squirt it out with water. They give you gauze, and you go home. So what happens? The gum starts to, it takes maybe 2-3 weeks to heal. Within the first second after they were done doing it, 1 trillion microorganisms went in there. So by the time they close it, there's an innumerable amount of microorganisms in there. And then it closes off, and what happens? You left the periodontal ligament, which is a bridge. So those little guys, they're microscopic, go right through that ligament, right into the bone up there. And they develop a cave where they grow and they mutate, and they're relatively immune from the immune system, or they're protected from getting attacked by the immune system. And they produce excretions which are biotoxins, and they infect the entire meridian. And if you don't understand meridians, think of your house where you have the bedroom light, the bathroom light, and the kitchen light go out. So you find the fuse box. That's a meridian, right? It's a circuit. So we have all these circuits in our body, but they all have to come through our teeth, because our teeth, remember, is the top of our spinal cord, so it's a very, very important thing. So, for example, I'll give a personal example. About 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I developed atrial fibrillation. Out of the blue, I didn't have any risk factors, and that's just irregular heart rate. So I was in America at that time. A few months later, I went to America, and I went to a study or be taught training for how to use acupuncture meridian by Dr. Simon Yu, who's a master. It's like playing a violin. Anyway, so I said, listen, by the way, can you tell me what's wrong with my heart? And he checks me all out on my hands, and he says, it's number 16 and 17, which is the upper wisdom tooth on this side and the lower. These are still intact. These were pulled. I said, but they were extracted 25 years ago. I don't have any pain or swelling. That's it. So I went to a biological dentist. What did they do? He said, I can't really find it, but if Dr. Yu says so, they all know him. So the dentist went in through the gums. He numbed me up, of course. He found fragments of bone, periodontal ligament, and pus. He cleaned them out with ozonated water. Then he took ozone gas and really hard put it in there, because that'll go into the bones, into the trabeculi, because these guys are little. He had already taken my blood, he spun it, and the top layer is your platelets and your fibrin. So he took that to seal it. So he immediately sealed it, both sides. Within 5 days, the atrial fib was gone. It's been gone for 2 years. Now, if I went to a heart doctor, would he have said, we better check your teeth? No. But guess what is on the wisdom tooth meridian? The heart and the small intestine. That's how real this stuff is. If I didn't think it was true before, I now know. Experience. But I've had women with breast CFCs on the left side. They have a root canal in the breast. So I would say, if we don't take that out, whatever else we do won't matter, because it's still plugged in. So whether if it's multiple myeloma, whatever it is, we've got to start with that part. And I view biologically, I view the body as a tube. Starts at the lips and ends at the anus. And if you keep that healthy, you'll live long and prosper. And if you don't, it's over quickly. Now remember, we shouldn't really put anything in this tube until what we put in it previously is out. Because if you keep putting in and it's not going out, you got problems. And that's what we do. That's why we have all these, that's why our body needs to adapt. Okay, you understand these adaptations can be called heart disease, stroke, arthritis. It's only one thing. It's a cumulative toxicity. Period. I'm going to give you a really good example. I had a guy who he was actually a nurse by profession, RN, and his wife had ovarian CFCs. And she came to our center. I remember him pushing her around on the wheelchair. Anyway, he stopped me one day, and it was about 6 weeks, and he said, "You know what? When we first came here, I had angina. That's heart pain. So I had to take nitroglycerin under my tongue 3 or 4 times a day. I had high blood pressure. I was on high blood pressure medication. I've been diabetic type so long that I'm on insulin. But I was trying to support my wife, Iris, make her. So I did the juice cleanse with her, and I even did some colonics, and I've been eating the food. He says, guess what? don't have chest pain. My blood pressure is normal, and I don't have diabetes. So if those were separate and distinct entities called diseases, that would imply that you needed separate, because that would imply they had separate. The word is etiology in medicine, the separate causes. And if they had separate causes, they therefore would have separate cures. So why is it by cleaning up, all of them went away? Why? Because there's only one condition, and it's toxemia. And that accounts for aging as well. And I can explain that at another time. So anyway, we start with that, with the mouth. The mouth got to be clean. So I have people do that, and I find a dentist for them, or they come and they do it with one of our local guys that we work with, and we use that 3 weeks to do your juice cleanse, teach you. It's called School of Life. Teach you what your body's all about. They forgot to tell us that in high school, and we all this stuff. So we don't do IVs or anything. So for who was it? Your uncle, you said?
It's my stepdad.
Oh, your stepdad. That's right. Okay. So that has to happen, and if it hasn't, it has to. And I think on my website I have a list of dentists, but there are good ones, because just because they say they're biological dentists doesn't mean they are. And really, and this is for everybody. Look under their website. Look under services. If they do root canals, they're not. If they save root canals, they're not. If they put any metal, including titanium implants, they're not. And they also must use ozone, because ozone is 300,000 times more bactericidal than chlorine, which is why they use it in the Olympics, right? And it's extremely, extremely cleansing. So, and the gas can get into. So make sure they do that, and also make sure finally that if they do a cavitation repair and all that, whatever they do, they seal it with your fibrin and platelets, so that nothing else recolonizes right away. And you close it off. You sterilize it and close it off, which is really important. So anything else is fine. They can do. The other thing they do is they do biocompatibility testing with your blood, because there are over 2,000 dental products. So everybody in the world may be able to use this one, but I can't, because I have a bad problem with it. And if I have a problem with it, then I'll get inflammation, and inflammation. So so after that, you then got to go after parasites. You got to do multiple parasite cleanses, and we all have parasites. We have to understand that parasites are microscopic unless we have an adult worm, and that's rare, right? But there are two kinds. There's worms and there's protozoa, which are single-celled organisms. They're everywhere. You cannot not have them. Okay. However, you can't find them on all the tests. So you can't believe these guys. I really am trying to open centers so there can be places where people can go for real answers, because the real answer is only one. You're toxic. And Bob Dylan said, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. So why didn't you test them for heavy metals? Well, I've never found anybody that doesn't have a problem with heavy metals. Well, in other words, and why should I test you and in your toxic condition? If I were going to test you, it would be after 6 months of cleansing. Let me see who you really are there. The toxic you is the toxic you. How's it going to help us to know that? Is it going to change the fact that we have to get rid of those toxins? No. So there's no utility. So anyway, so that would be the second thing. So I would say first thing is biological density. You can start the juice cleanse during that time. Why do you do a juice cleanse? You do nothing but drink fresh juices, maybe 3 quarts, 4 quarts, as much as you can a day, and don't eat. You got to drink, and by the way, the first 3 days are the hardest. You got to drink so much that you're so full that you can never misinterpret what's going on, that hunger, what we call hunger, but it's really appetite. But you can. It takes 3 or 4 days until that goes away, and you realize, I'm not hungry. So you go, as long as if you can do 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Why? Because all you're doing is removing the fiber, but you're still getting the nutrients. So it's a highly nutritious cleanse. But I don't want to lose any weight. Whatever. So you're changing the water in the aquarium. So you do it for 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, and you're peeing out of both ends and all that. You've changed your interstitial fluid. That is the fluid in which the cells have their existence. Our cells are the fish in the aquarium, and the interstitial fluid is the water. And if you don't change the water in the aquarium, it doesn't matter how much medicine you give those fish, they're going to be sick. So you got to change the water, and that's the way you do it. And remember, I don't call it a juice fast because it's not. Water is a fast. You got to put the word eat, and the first letter of the word eat is E, so you turn fast into feast. It's a juice feast. You're getting more nutrients in one day, in 1 liter, in one day. Let's say you drink 2 liters. You realize that 1 liter is this many vegetables. 2 liters is about this. You couldn't eat that many vegetables, but you've taken away the fiber, that which is undigestible. Not that we don't need it, but I'm just saying we don't assimilate it and turn it into flesh, blood, and energy. So you're getting all the nutrients. So you're getting more than the average person. So you're fine. You'll lose weight. Great. You did an oil change. I mean, what if you didn't change your oil in your car for 2 years? Would you expect high performance? No. So, but anyway, after doing that, and you can either start the parasite cleanse during then or after the juice feast. That's how sensitive the person's stomach is. And you have to do several, because remember, these guys lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. They're in the wall of your organ, and you can't find them. And each egg can become 2,000 worms. I mean, it's beyond crazy. And then protozoa. By the way, when they take out the pus from your mouth, when they do it, they find the cavitation or they find the root canal, and they send it to DNA. There's a lab called DNA Connections, and they do the DNA to find out what was in you. It's like you had 38 bacteria and 2 protozoal parasites. I can't tell you. I think maybe 1 or 2 people didn't have a parasite in their gum, in their bone above that, and they didn't have any symptoms from it. So I got to tell you, they're ubiquitous. It's hard to kill them. So you get a 3 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off, at least 12 cycles. After that, the only way you get tested is with acupuncture meridian, because there's no other instrument, there's no other blood test, there's no other way to determine it. And what meridian assessments do, they just look at, is there a power shortage here? If there's still a power shortage on this particular meridian, then something's causing it, right? And so that's how you know when you're done. And it picks up the 10 to 15% that no physical or biochemical testing can. And so that's why it detects by energy. So I love it for that matter. So you've done the cleanse, you've done all that, and then during the cleanse you're going to get colonics, because you got to clean your cecum, which is right over here. I think on the way out of paradise, out of Eden. Now I don't know if the cecum is the part just where your small intestines enter your large intestines. It's a little sac that hangs off, and then at the bottom is the appendix. So, but it stores stuff for decades, and I've seen it. So when that old expression, death begins in the colon, was the cecum. So I think as we walked out of Eden, God slapped the cecum on us and said, now you're going to die. Okay, so I'm telling you, you got to clean that. And I mean, I had to check out this. I had a woman who was, I can't remember if it was 38 or 48 years old. She had breast CFCs. And I was talking about her history, and found out when she was 12 years old, she almost died from eating corn. It was she had an anaphylactic reaction. So she couldn't eat corn after that. Well, she was at our center, and we always give 2 colonics a week at the beginning. Um, on her 18th colonic, a piece of corn came out. I mean, you know, what are you going to say? So I'm telling you, you got to clean I don't care how, I go regularly. Oh, well, yeah, seek them. And the only way you can't get it with enemas. Enemas clean out the rectal vault and the descending colon a little bit, but you got to go all the way around to here so after your like third fill, if you have a good colon therapist, you'll feel a bulge right here in the lower right part of your abdomen where your cecum is. And when you get that bulge, and when that cleans out, I can't even tell you how good it feels. It's like, you know how good you feel after a shower outside? Well, imagine 10 times more, but on the inside. It's like, wow. So I almost consider my life BC and AC, before colonics and after colonics. I can't tell you it's what it is, but now I would say do two a week, for about at least 18 times, and then one a week for about, let's say, 2 months, and then you can do one a month. But I never would. I would like to. I do them at least once a week, but when I can. Um, but you have them done to you. It's got to be a person, because it requires somebody else to do it. But they got to be good. And again, just like in doctors or anything, lawyers, you got to find people that really know what they're doing. Um, but anyway, so you've cleaned that out, and you've cleaned that, and you've got a certified lymphatic therapist making. Later, it's my housekeeper. I'm in a hotel. I hope she comes back. They don't sometimes. So after you've cleaned out everything, colonics, and you have a lymphatic therapist who moves your lymph, because like, for example, if any woman's ever had breast CFCs or something like that, and they take out 21 lymph nodes, which they should be arrested for that. They take out 21 lymph nodes. So now the question is, and then they say, don't do any lymphatic massage. I want you to understand how insane this is. If you're walking next to a river and you get thirsty, you'll drink. Half hour down the path, it turns into a pond. Are you going to drink at the pond? No. So flow is life, cleanliness, flow, energy. As soon as it stops, it gets stagnant. You got to keep that stuff moving. So a lymphatic therapist who's certified in not only manual lymphatic therapy, but electro lymphatic therapy, which is these glass wands that have noble gases like argon and krypton. And what they do is put one on your neck to ground out, and there's no grounding. It's not grounding the way you think. And then they run the other one just lightly above your skin, and it moves the lymph. I've had women with tumors this big on their breast. After one good lymphatic, it's half the size. Why? Because most of it was congested gunk. So that you need to get that kind of person. Now, if you can't find one, you can't find a real one, what do? Well, you can get a little rebounder. A rebounder is like a little trampoline, and you go up, not jump. You just go up to almost leaving. So basically, you're going up and down, and that up and down, the gravity moves your lymphatics up and down. Another really good thing you can do is any kind of movement exercise and all that is going to get your lymphatics going. But a big one is this. All the lymphatics from the bottom and your left side go into one vessel that empties into the blood. The right side is just the right arm, and that goes into the right side. But most of it is there. But that top part of that vessel before it goes into the blood is called the cisterna chyli. So you have a diaphragm, and when you're breathing correctly, healthy, you're using its diaphragmatic, because when the diaphragm, which is at rest like this, when you inhale, what you're doing is it goes like this, so you increase the volume of your chest and the air rushes in. Okay, then you breathe out and breathe in and breathe out. When you do that, it puts pressure on the cisterna chyli and it goes in there. So it's lymphatic movement. You know what else does it? A belly laugh, a real laugh, not a chuckle, but a belly laugh, because your diaphragm's almost in spasming, and it's cleaning out your lymphs. It's beautiful. That's why laughter is really good medicine, and in other ways too, because of the psychology of it. Um, but anyway, so that's what I would do with this fellow and anybody. Make sure they've cleaned out every system, and then the final one, which is uh, trumps all of them, and I'm glad we can use that word again. Trumps all of them is the mind. The mind, because if you have any negative emotion, fear, sadness, regret, anger, any of that, that puts your foot on the brakes of the immune system directly, right? And if you have the opposite, like, you just got the greatest news in the world, I took a blood test right away, I'd see your natural killer cells are high, your T cells are high, and all that. Here's the problem: we can't control our mind because it's not a voluntary process, and so you don't really know what the content's going to be. And we know that 80% of human thought is negative because we grow up with 3 commands: no, stop, don't, no, stop, don't, no, stop, don't. Okay, so it's negative. So therefore, and only 10% is conscious, 90 is subconscious. So you don't know what you're telling yourself. So even though I'm picturing a lake with a rainbow, 80% is going underneath there. That is suppressing my immune system. So what I've learned is, as long as you're thinking, you've got your foot on the brakes of the immune system. So you've got to not think. You've got to learn to not think. So these are studies. I mean, everything I say is I've got papers on peer-reviewed journals. They had catheters in people who were good meditators, and the minute they went in, remember, meditation for everybody, whatever religion you are, it's not violating your religion, because meditation is, if you pray, you're talking to God, and if you meditate, you're giving him the courtesy of listening. That's all we're talking about. Listen. If you say your prayers, sit back for 2 minutes and listen for the answer. And where do you find God? Your breath. When the holy breath of God leaves your body, it turns back, not to Germany, not to Moscow, not to LA, it turns back to Earth. Okay, so I tell people, just 5 times a day for only 2 minutes. You can commit 2 minutes. Just sit and listen to your breath. You won't last more than 3 seconds, you'll be off. And then remember to come back. But by doing it 5 times a day, just for 2 minutes, and you can commit to 2 minutes. If I told you to do 20 minutes, that's ridiculous. You can't do 3 seconds. So that doesn't make sense. But at least the 2-minute goal is anybody's saying, okay. Anyway, you do that after about 3 or 4 months and you're consistent, you might get up to 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 15, of not thinking. And the tests show that the minute your foot is off the brake, you've got your foot off the brakes of the immune system, the natural killer cells, the T cells get activated, dendritic cells get activated. I mean, this is called psychoneuroimmunology. It's a real field. So, if the word meditation offends someone, it's just another word for psychoneuroimmunology. But if you don't do that, you can't heal.
It amplifies a lot. That's like Wim Hof does a lot of stuff. He did the same thing. I want to say they directly injected him. I forget if it was salmonella, but it was something that would have killed him. And he's like, put it in. I'll show you I can meditate and I can do breath work and I can boost my T cells and kill it. And within less than 6 hours, they couldn't find a trace of it.
Right.
And that was one of those things where they directly injected it right into him. They're like, you're probably going to fucking die, dude. They're like, give me 2 other people in like 3 weeks. I'll teach them how to do it. You can inject all of us and we'll kill it within like a few hours. They had all the stuff hooked up to them to do it. So, all right, let me try and do my paraphrasing. I want to see if I've got like directions here. Train your brain and believe that you can have at least the positivity element before you go in, that this is beatable. And you can use breath work and meditation on a daily basis to be able to keep yourself in the train your brain element of it. And also, it's good to hang around with positive, happy people, because the laughter will also encourage healing and lower cortisol, make it so you're less stressed, all of those things, right? So lower the stress, believe you've got this, have the positivity behind it, right? Now, what's happening, you said, is we need more ATP. The ATP is going on where the fermentation, the chronic fermentation of the cells. So what we have to do is not get caught up in diagnosis and catch that there was a problem that happened and we need to get rid of it. So all your cells are doing is fermenting to adapt for survival. But if you do chemotherapy, it doesn't get rid of the root. It's going to just get the mature ones and not the stem, which means it's going to come back. So we have to probably not go to the chemo and not poison just the big ones and miss the core ones. We got to get to the core. Start with your mouth. Go to a biodentist. Get checked out, because 80 to 90% of what you need starts there. Our mouth seems to be a big cause for all of it. Not only the words we say, the food we eat, and the
Exactly.
sicknesses we believe.
Yeah.
It's all starting with mouth. And so, since the mouth is connected to the spine, check the fuse boxes. Go to the fuse box and see what's all turning on and off here. Then you see you have an accumulative toxicity. Everything is connected with the toxemia. So doing the juice cleanse or the juice feast. And then after that, or even during that, start killing parasites, because we all got parasites. And I can attest, I've done parasite cleanses. It's wild. And so, like, I'm with you there. So let's get rid of all the stuff in there. Let's get rid of the toxic stuff. The heavy metals, you got them. Let's get rid of some of those. Let's get rid of the parasites. Let's get rid of the toxins. Let's get rid of all the stuff in the teeth or all the things that are poisoning your spine. Let's get rid of all the shit. We got to clean the water. So you had to go to the interstitial fluid has to be oil changed. We got 12 cycles of parasite detoxes. We've got to do deep colonic cleanses. You got to clean the septum. You've got to get in there. You got before colonics, after colonics. You'll know the difference. And so you got 2 a week, 18 times at least, and then you got 1 a week for months, and then you got at least every month get at least 1 in. Keep the bottom cleaned out. Then go to a lymphatic therapist who does lymph massage, because the flow is life. I have a rebounder, so I was jumping on it yesterday. Rebounders are great, and they'll keep the lymph going, so you got to keep that going too. And just maintain a lot of these, like just clean out the whole thing. And if you clean everything out, you stop putting garbage in, not just in your mind, from your mouth. Stop doing the sugars and the sweets and the garbage and the junk. Do the clean juice. Clean out the parasites, clean out the metals, clean out your butthole, and then you should be able to start going, like, now check and see if you still have these fermented cells. That should clean everything out, because your body knows what to do. You just got to stop doing stuff to your body to stop it from doing what it needs. Is that
Exactly.
a fair
That was
breakdown?
perfect. That was perfect. And what you just said, summarized, that can be summarized as, if you eliminate all of the things that were hampering your cells from doing what they were designed to do, which is optimally function. Once you remove all that, they no longer need to adapt. And remember, the fermentive dance was an adaptive dance. So they no longer need to, and they won't. They'll go back, because that's not what they were designed to. They were designed to function optimally. It goes back to, so it's like so simple that we can't believe it. And yet, the truth is always simple. And what I love about the truth is that when you hear it, you know it. And that's because we are truth. Our fundamental being is truth. So when we hear it, it resonates with us. And it's always simple. So if someone's got a lot of words and you're scratching your head, it's not. It's bullshit, right? So the truth is simple. Now, I'm not saying it's not complex, because when I look at the biochemistry, it's beyond any human being. I'll tell you why. Anything that's good for a CFC is good for your regular cell. So, because the CFC is just like one of your cells that went to Gold's Gym. You're not going to pick a fight with a guy that walked out with Gold's Gym. If you're going to have a fight, you're going to fight the guy that was sitting playing on his computer all day, not the guy. Well, these CFCs just walked out of Gold's Gym. Right? So they're ready. So, I mean, you give them the biggest chemo in the world, the strongest. Within 3 doses, they go, that was great. Give me some more. Meanwhile, you've lost your hair, your lunch, everything's, coming out. So don't go head to head. Don't go head to head. What you do, you change the environment so they don't have a place to exist anymore. And then you overwhelm them with different metabolic therapies. And metabolic therapies are therapies that require them to use an enzyme that they don't have, that healthy cells do have, like vitamin C does that, and B17 and all that. So all these metabolic therapies. So if you're doing this 3 times a week, this 4 times a week, this 2 times a week, this, in other words, it gets exhausted. And now it has no place to live because you've cleaned out. And then you wake up the immune system. There's not a problem. So remember, there's no cancer. what people call cancer is CFCs are not an alien. It's your body that's adapting to see, our body's smarter than us. So way smarter. It's our body's God. I mean, so I'm eating food that doesn't meet my biological requirements. So my body adapts, makes my cells insulin resistant or whatever it is so I can live, because I don't know how to do it. And I'll tell you, this is a very important thing if people can understand it. I don't know if everyone can, but in the biosphere, when we talk about life, all biological life is orchestrated by something called instinct. And instinct is the divine web by which all creatures are connected to the wisdom of God. And God is the essence of everything. So therefore, a baby spider spins his first web perfectly. He didn't go to engineering school. That new baby bird that gets into the flock didn't go to aviation academy. Perfect formation. Okay, that's what nature is, instinct. Now, instinct's just being connected to God, right? So, and what do I say about nature? Well, I got to tell you, it's the opposite of eternal. It's called perpetual. It's in perpetual change. But again, with no beginning and no end, perpetual change. It's the aspect of perpetuality, and it's the same thing, just changing. And the thing about that part of the universe, that part of reality, is that it has a beginning, a middle, and end. A beginning, a middle, and end, and that's what it is. So there's the perpetual universe, and then there's the eternal universe, which is never changing, eternal, right? And there you go. There's the duality that gives existence. But anyway, what I wanted to say about I lost my point when I was talking about perpetual. What did I say that for? Well, okay. I wanted to say instinct. Okay, so this is it. When we are born, before we can speak, within a couple weeks of coming home from the hospital, our parents are no longer, it's not like the first day. And then we hear 3 words from them, and that is no, stop, don't. No, stop, don't. No, stop, don't. Whatever language. And what they're saying to you, you're pre-verbal, you don't have any concepts, what they're saying to you is, if I want to put some words to it, you're not good enough. We're going to fix you. In other words, your instincts are unacceptable. Because remember, a baby and a child is 100% innocent. They're just acting out of instinct, right? And they would discover what they need to do and what they don't need to do if they were allowed, but they're not. So they're enculturated. So you become a good American, a good German, a good African, a good Chinese, whatever. So now all of your responses to life are no longer instinctual, but rather cultural. And what is the center? The centerpiece of every culture is its cuisine. And it's around the cuisine that we have our deepest and most cherished moments. Romantic dinners, dinner with the family, holidays, business lunches. I mean, food is a central thing. And so, like in my family, Italian, right? Diabetes, stroke, heart attacks, runs in my family. No. Pizza, meatballs, sausages run in my family. And if I don't eat them, I can't get them. So, I mean, so anyway, so we no longer have access to instinct, which means we have to go to seminars on what to eat. Dogs don't have these seminars, rats don't, rabbits don't. And guess what? You cannot get a dog to eat horse food, and you cannot get a horse to eat dog food. They won't. Now, we not only eat the food of all the species, but we do it in one meal. And we eat anything a cockroach would eat, including the cockroach. I mean, in Cambodia, they eat spiders, and in China, they're eating live monkey brain. In Tennessee, they're eating bull testicles. So you can't ever knock someone's food, because it's just what you had up until the age of 5 or 6, and that establishes your emotional relationship with food, and then it just gets embellished. And so that's the big thing. I'm writing a book called Why It Has to Taste Good. Because if it doesn't taste good, it's not good for you, actually, because you'll feel deprived. That'll suppress your immune system. So you'll actually lose. So what you've got to do with an adult who's already there is you've got to say, look, right now you're in a burning building. You're standing at the window. You got these flames all around you, and there's a building across the way. Are you going to jump 90% of the way? No. You're going to jump 120%. Now, once you get there, you can walk on the edges and stuff. So what I'm saying is, just for now, let's get out of the burning building, and then we can like do 80-20. So if a person knows psychologically that they don't have to do this forever, they can do it, right? So the other thing is this. When you're eating, I don't care what it is, within 20, 30 minutes, you'll be full. And if you think about, you want your favorite meal, whatever it is it steak, pizza, whatever, and you sit down to eat it, and you haven't eaten all day, and you're just so excited. So now you take a bite, and that first bite is the moment you were looking for. It reminds me of a junkie, the first shot, or the cocaine addict is chasing that first. Okay, now, you might enjoy it for 10 seconds, 20 seconds till you swallowed it. But the second bite you start, but then you're talking. And then so you miss it. Maybe on the fourth bite, you'll get a moment of pleasure. So in the whole 20 minutes, you got 5 minutes of pleasure. Now you're going to trade that for your well-being. That's what you've decided. It's worth it. Because remember, after you're done eating, your body's got to figure out, wait, is this food? And I define food as that which can be converted into flesh, blood, or energy. And I define poison as that which cannot and must be eliminated. I mean, to make it very simple, right? So now your body's got all this stuff in it, sitting in the stomach, and it's got to do something with it. And by the way, everything you eat, I wish people could see this. If you could vomit on command, I'd love that, because what will happen is you'll see that once you've chewed it, swallowed it, it becomes what we call chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, and then it changes as it goes through. If you can see 3 minutes after you ate something what it looks like and what it is, you would never eat it. It's amazing. But anyway, but your body now has to deal with it, and it does. Like, it's unbelievable. And you know, when I see that I see people that eat nothing but fast food, which is not only not nutritious, it's a negative nutrition, right? It costs much more. That's when I realized that we don't need to eat, because they're not eating. They're just poisoning. They're alive, and I'm like, whoa. So I realized we don't eat. But anyway, your body's got to deal with it, and what it happens is your ability to deal with waste disposal and stuff like that decreases over time, and you begin to accumulate these toxins, right? And as these toxins build up in every organ, that organ will start to become dysfunctional to some degree. Well, when those toxins, it takes about 50 years around, start affecting the organs in your body, the glands in your gut body that produce hormones, your hormone production goes down. And then the phenomenon of aging can be seen. All right, now, I'm not saying you won't age, but guess what? After the Genesis diet, before the flood, the average age was 912. And then God said to Noah, listen, I'm paraphrasing, of course. God said, you're going to act like hyenas, you might as well eat like hyenas. So they did. And within the first 5 generations after Noah, the length of years was 120. Today, if we make it to 90, we've got diapers and tubes coming out of our noses. So, okay. So what is the human potential? I would say probably in mid-900s. You know, you know, we're astounded if someone makes it to 100. When I was down in Vilcabamba in Ecuador, it's called the Valley of the Long-Lived Ones. To have a seat at the elders' table, you had to be 100. If you're 99, you're just too young, son. You know, so imagine that. Imagine cultures. But they had a reverence for age. They had respect. You know, we're oriented to being what? Young, thin, and rich. Beautiful, thin, and rich, or something like that. And that's where we go. So no matter what age you are, that's where you want to go. But they're the opposite. They want to get old. And you get more respect the older you get. Right? And these guys at 130 are doing things that we can't do at 40. So that's why I say the toxicities. So we have an extremely successful premature aging and death program in the West, because we do, okay, so our ability to push away the waste decreases, we accumulate toxins, and we get sick. Now, just one last thing on that. There was I can't remember his name. I always forget his name. Anyway, I think he got the Nobel Prize in 1915. I think it was 15, around there. But for proving that the blood pumps the heart. It's not the heart that pumps the blood. Okay? And the reason it is, think about it, the heart is a circular muscle. So what happens? When blood fills up the ventricle, right? And it expands like this. The wider it expands, the greater the contraction. Right? So the less blood that fills it, the less it'll contract. And have you ever heard of an embolus? You ever been in the hospital and they're afraid of air getting in the line? Well, those little bubbles aren't going to hurt you. You'd have to inject like 15 to 20 cc's of air. And when the air got into your heart, it would go into fibrillation, you'd die. Okay, the heart's not pumping. The blood expands it, so that it will naturally do that. Just like the bird's not flying, the air is flying the bird. The bird's just doing this. The fish is not swimming, the water's swimming the fish. We have to, it's kind of, anyway, this guy was interested in hearts and stuff like that. So he took chicken hearts.
I had that as William Harvey.
William Harvey, okay. Chicken hearts, put them in a petri dish or some sort of medium. And he wanted to see what would happen if I didn't let toxins accumulate. So it started, it was in 1915, around there. I think it was in the early 60s. Someone forgot to clean it, or they stopped doing it for some reason, and they died. Now, chickens don't live that long. They just don't live that long. So what that showed was, if you keep it clean, who knows? And remember, every tissue, in our body, like liver as tissue, and or organ or something, has one entrance in. That's the artery, and then the arteriole. So you got one entrance in, but you have two elimination paths, veins and lymphatics. So anatomically, God's telling us that it's more important to eliminate than to eat. And I've learned that you can eat a little bit of junk once a day, and that's going to be better than eating a lot of good food all day long. Believe it or not.
Why is that? Why could we eat some junk and it's better than just eating good all the time?
No. What it means is that if you eat a little bit of junk, well, you won't live as long as you would. But if you eat a little bit of junk, that means 23.5 hours a day you're not eating. And when you're not eating, the body is cleaning, rejuvenating, regenerating. And so that's what happens. So that's why you have to stop eating. If you're 30 or younger, you stop eating 3 hours before you go to bed. 40, 4 hours. 50 or above, 5 hours. Some people 6 hours before going to bed. Why? Because when you go to sleep, you want to make sure you're not still absorbing. Because if you're not absorbing, you'll immediately go into autophagy and start cleaning. But if you're still absorbing, you won't get that benefit. And the thing is, we have 90-minute sleep cycles. And there's a biological set point around anywhere from 12:30 a.m. to 2:33 a.m. where your new day starts, your biological new day. So before that time, about 80% of that 90-minute sleep cycle is regenerative sleep, restorative sleep, and only 20% is dreams. When you hit that, by the time you get up here, it's the opposite. 80% is dreams, 20% is restorative. All right, so that's why I say if you go to bed at 11 p.m. and you sleep to 7, you got 8 hours. You had plenty of dreams, so you don't hate everybody that you see. But you didn't restore your body. You didn't have enough restorative cycles. And if you go to bed at 8, which, by the way, we're diurnal, not nocturnal. And if you ever want to know the answer of what to do, imagine it's 7,000 years ago. What would you do? And that'll help you. And imagine you're naked in the jungle. It's just what you're gonna eat. You gotta do that if you want to get the answer. But anyway, so we're nocturnal, and diurnal, and it turns out that by going to sleep about an hour after sunset, if you lived in the equatorial zones, which is our biological niche, 12-hour days, 12-hour nights, you would get probably 4 cycles of mostly restorative before you hit that biological new day. And you're a different person. You've cleaned out. I mean, I tell you, there's a guy in Bangkok. He eats regular Thai food, which is not good and not healthy. But since he was 40, he took 1 month out of the year and he did a water fast. Every year. He's 88 and he looks 40. It's shocking because what did he do? He eliminated that waste. When you do a water fast, there's different parts to it. And you say, well, can I do 4 1 weeks? You could, but it's not the same because it's not until day 9 that your brain stops using glucose, right? Day 2, all of your organs are using the fat, the ketones. But your brain, which takes 25% of the glucose, doesn't agree to this until about day 9. So day 10 begins. What happens is gluconeogenesis, that is making new glucose from your protein, stops. I mean, it's very low. And now your body goes on a scavenging hunt to find any non-essential tissue and to recycle it for fuel. That means cysts, plaques in your artery, tumors, anything. It's going to eat them up because it needs it for fuel. Okay, it's just unbelievable. And so, the real benefit of the fast begins on day 10. And I've had people with advanced stage 4 told they had 6 months to live by one of the witches or warlocks. And I remember a woman from the UK. She comes in, and she had breast CFCs all over the place. And she said, "Let's do it. Water." So I said, well, she said, "How long?" I said, "Until it's gone." That was 41 days. Now, I don't know why, because it's interesting. I'm blown away because, Moses fasted for 80 days. He fasted for 40, came down and got pissed off, went back up and did another 40. Jesus fasted for 40. So I don't understand the 40. But every time I've worked with someone on a prolonged fast, it turns out to be 41. But anyway, and believe you can't do that alone unless you're experienced, because it's the refeeding part. You can get up there maybe, but the hardest thing is after 2 weeks of a fast, water gets awfully boring, and so you don't drink enough, and you start to get dehydrated. So if I was taking care of you, you were on a fasting retreat, and if I do your blood, it's called orthostatics. We just find out if your volume depleted. We just give you some normal saline, just keep you hydrated, because you're not drinking it, and then you're still fine. But anyway, so she did this for 41 days, and we refed her. It took us about almost 4 weeks to get her feet eating again. And by the way, the most digestible food for an adult human is melons. So if you're breaking, I say for every 5 days of no water, of only water only, 1 day of melons. So you just figure that.
Break your fast with melons. What about if you're doing like the daily fast? Like if you're doing like a intermittent fasting, starting with melons is still a good idea?
No. We have to define fast. A fast is 24 hours abstaining from any food, any nutrients. Okay, so if you're eating once a day or twice a day, that's just healthy eating. Because what that's doing is, remember, if you stopped eating, let's say you're 40 years old, you stop eating 4 hours before sleep, you're going to go to bed by 9. That means 5 o'clock. You stopped eating. You put your fork down. Okay? Now, if you do the math, that's 11 a.m. You can have your first meal. That's not hard. That's not hard.
No, it's not that tough. I intermittent fast often, so like it's not that difficult to do. There's just a lot of information going on, like stuff to keep up with, like when to do what and what our food is doing, and the blood pumping heart, and what our instincts are, and the pieces that are built in, and what to go with that, and the beginning, the middle, the end, all of the stuff that's out there. It's tough to keep up with all of these things.
I know.
And like even before I have a diagnosis, I could probably go through and do some of the stuff and just do a cleanse anyways and not even have to worry about it later.
Exactly.
So What about like alkaline, like alkalining our bodies? Is that useful, drinking alkaline water? Is that doing anything, or is that a waste of time?
Well, that's a really good question. All okay. Remember I had mentioned that we have 36 septillion chemical reactions every second. Well, each one of those is performed by an enzyme. Okay, an enzyme is a protein, and a protein has a primary structure, which is the sequence of amino acids, the secondary structure, which is how it folds because of these hydrogen bonds, and some other sulfur bonds, and the tertiary structure is its three-dimensional shape, and it's the tertiary structure that gives it its function. So here's my hand, right? Wait, where are we? Okay, so 4 fingers and one thumb. But if I had my thumb up here, it wouldn't work. So form and function are two sides of the same coin, right? So with an enzyme, which is a protein, its three-dimensional shape is maintained by two physical aspects of the environment, that is pH and temperature. So all of the enzymes in our body function optimally at 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 Fahrenheit. Okay, and remember, temperature is just a way of measuring energy, right? So if the molecules of water are moving very slowly, it's ice. If they're going faster, it's water. If they're going faster, it's steam. It's still water. It's just how quickly it's moving, right? So they function best at that. Now, the optimal pH depends on the tissue. For example, your stomach's got to have a pH of 1.5. You put your finger in there, your skin's coming off. Your colon is 6.8. It's different. They're all different ones. So the pH varies, but the temperature is the same. Now, by the way, I just want to mention that our cells, the optimal temperature for our cellular work is at 98.6 Fahrenheit, except our immune system. Our immune system optimally functions at 103.5. And the reason that's why we get a fever. So a fever is not an indication of a Tylenol deficiency. Okay, a fever is how you activate your immune system. It's how you go from surveillance to attack. All right, and that's what it is. You don't take something. If you get a fever, say thank you, God. You got to understand. You know what a lizard has to do, or a snake? They have to crawl onto a hot rock and bake in the sun because they can't get a fever, but they know enough to do that. So that's what I'm saying. So it's temperature. So the pH varies. So we're just talking about alkaline water, etc. The pH of our cells and the interstitial fluid, and therefore the blood, must be between 7.35 and 7.45. Now, 7.0 is neutral. Anything below 7 is called acid. Anything above 7 is called alkaline. So clearly, we need to be in an alkaline state. But just so you understand, there's no good and bad here, remember? So you're tightly held between 3.5 and 4.5. If you go above or below, it's a problem. So being too alkaline is just as dangerous as being too acidic. Okay, you have to understand that. Remember that when you use Drano, that has a pH of 11. I mean, it's going to, so same thing. So understand that pH, we're just talking about a narrow range, and our body does everything it can to keep us there. Now and we're talking about the interstitial fluid and the tissues and the blood vessels, but we're not talking about the organ systems. Now, therefore, yes, we need the blood circulatory system needs to have a pH of, so let's say the average 7.4 is perfect. Okay, it needs to be 7.4 so that it can deliver to the cells everything at pH of 7.4, and they have to keep it that way. And as long as that's going on, we're fine. That's alkaline. All right, we don't want to be 7.5. We'll be in trouble. We want to be 7.4. Now, I have to have a stomach pH of 1.5. So I drink alkaline water. What's going to happen? That alkaline, it's going to go into my stomach, and it's going to be used right away. It's not going to wait. Chemistry happens now. So now what I've wound up doing was increasing my stomach pH from 1.5 to maybe 2.5. That doesn't change my body's alkalinity. In fact, it's dangerous. As it turns out, the reason we need a 1.5 pH, which means a lot of acid, the reason we need that not only to eliminate any parasites or bacteria or things that we eat, but also the acid actually modifies the food so that we can absorb it. An example, spinach, spinach, Popeye, and he was strong. It has iron in it. That iron comes in a form where it's called ferric, where it's called Fe3 plus. So you eat it, gets into your stomach. Now we can only absorb Fe2 plus, but it's this acid in the stomach that turns it to the Fe2, and then it can be absorbed. So I remember doing rounds when I was a medical student, and the professor says, this person has anemia of old age. I was thinking, wow, what's that? It wasn't until after medical school, years later, I realized, you know what? By the age of 40, we start producing less and less gastric acid. It's called hypochlorhydria. And if you don't have enough acid, you're not going to process the foods. So the reason she was anemic is though she was eating, she wasn't getting the iron. She couldn't absorb it because of the height. And then the older you get, the less acid you produce, right? And so that's a problem. So you need that. And you also need it. The acid is also going to digest proteins and do certain things. And together with the mechanical actions of the stomach, it prepares the food for the next stage. So drinking alkaline water, but this is the way to get alkaline. We have to what do we want to get alkaline? Our cells and our blood. So what do? Anything that has a positive charge, and those are all minerals. That positive charge, it's weird science, but it means it's lacking an electron, which means it'll grab one. So you have to have these positive charges there to grab the mineral. So it's not the pH of the substance, it's the pH, it's what it does in your body. So if I eat a lemon, if you check a lemon, it's acidic, citric acid, but it's an alkaline producing food. And what produces the alkalinity are the cations like magnesium, calcium, all the positively charged cations. Okay, that's what makes our body alkaline. So I drink a big glass of green juice I just made. I drink it, and all the minerals go into my blood, and they send them everywhere, and it alkalinizes my body where it should be alkalinized. I don't want to alkalinize my stomach. That's got to be out. So most doctors are now, regular doctors are putting people on proton pump inhibitors and other antacids and stuff like that. When the truth is, when you're getting indigestion, it's because you don't have enough acid. That's why they say drink apple cider vinegar, or just do some things to make more acid, and you'll see it's not that you need an antacid, you need an acid. It's the opposite. Of course, everything that they talk about is the opposite of the truth. So you need more acid. So anyway, so elderly, and if you're getting indigestion, it's just the same thing, what they call indigestion. So you take Tums and you feel better and all that, but it's really, you need acid. So okay, so that's the idea with alkaline water, and that was a big confusion, and I'm still trying to figure out how it became so big, because it's really contrary to physiology, and I just wonder what happened.
It's the same with all of it. It's the same thing we talked about before. It's all marketing. It's all the words. And so I remember seeing when it came out, there was even multi-level marketing companies and other advertisements and people advertising that, alkaline water boosts all the white blood cells and everything alkaline is good and cancer can't live in alkaline environments.
Yeah,
and these things may be true. So they're like, but we'll just sell water. And the water can be alkaline, and that'll make it so that makes you able to fight cancer with the water that you drink. And so it's the thing I noticed with almost all of the tough things, especially for the propaganda for today, is the best lies are 95% true.
Right.
And so there's going to be a high element of truth to it, but just a little twist to make it so, like, yes, alkaline kills cancer. Yes, a high acid environment will create cancer throughout your body. Yes. But if you drink alkaline water that doesn't do that, well, we'll leave that out because I want to sell more of the alkaline filters, or I want to sell more of these $5,000 machines, or whatever it would be. And so it's easy to be able to market partial falses with majority truth. And that's what a lot of the things are, or even like the possibility of the truth. And people really struggle today with truth. Truth is probably the hardest fight for almost everybody. It's the toughest game right now. It's even the one that you have to fight, where if you're like, no, this is actually true, I can show you. There's even got to be that element of there's no way. I don't believe it. Why? Well, because I don't want to challenge it, or because, sometimes you'll speak in terms that are confusing. And so since I'm confused and it ends with the Socratic answers of I don't fucking know, fuck you. The answer is fuck you, because I don't know what you're saying. And so then it's like, I'm going to go to somebody who just, you do the thinking. I don't want to do it. And so then they'll just go, well, you need this, you need these filters, or you need this drugs, or you need this thing, and now you're better. But it's really not. It's just masking until you just get sicker and sicker. And there's a lot of things that you're saying that have these may be absolute truths, but it's also more work. Fasting is a lot of work. It's uncomfortable, and I don't like it. And I like the Italian food. It's delicious, in the cuisine and my culture and my family, and everyone's around and we're all getting together for graduations and for birthdays and for celebrations. And I'm here just pounding water with my angry face, smelling bacon and pies. And I'm like, this makes me salty. Right. I'm angry. And so this gets into rhetorical doubts, and it gets into things that make us feel like we're not good enough, or this is stupid. And by rhetorical doubts, I mean, like, well, what's the fucking point? What's the fucking point of this? Right. Well, no, answer the question. Don't leave it rhetorical. Answer it. The point is you want to get rid of cancer, or the point is you don't want to die, or the point is there's a point to answer the damn question. But if you leave it as what the point, fuck it, I'm just going to eat something. And so it's a lot to take in. And like I've taken, 6 pages of notes from what you've said already. And that's why I try to paraphrase it, because you're dropping a lot of wisdom. And you also throw in very complex wisdoms between your wisdom points. So when you jump points, you'll throw in something that's very advanced that just kind of gets moved past very quickly. It's like, well, I've seen entire documentaries on just that one sentence you threw past there. So, exactly. So there's very advanced things you're saying. And I really would say if somebody listened to this a few times, it's tough too, because you do a thing that most elders do, is you speak in stories, or you'll throw a parable in, or you'll say something that's like, well, here's an example, or here's a story to say this. And people will miss the concept or purpose because of the story, even though the story is the bridge to the concept and the purpose. And this is also where today people want instant gratification, and I don't want explanation. I want answers, not solutions. I just want it to work. Just do it. And you're like, well, but there's a reason it does it. And so I really hope that people listen multiple times, because to a person who doesn't understand what you're doing, it seems like babbling. But if you understand what you're doing, you're just dropping thousands of years of wisdom very quickly. And it's very hard to catch. Most people will not get it. My audience enjoys this kind of stuff. So my people will be like, I got to listen to this guy again and take good notes. Like I said, I'm at 6 pages now, and it's very easy to see how you can just fill books just talking to you. Yeah. So,
and that's what I've started a couple books. If I could, I need a month where I don't have to do anything. I could finish these books. I need it. But
I'm with you. I had to schedule the next couple of days. I got this book, the Map Out of Hell, that I'm working on right now to help people with the behavior change that gets people out of their stuff. And it takes so much time.
And you can't get interrupted. You've got to stay on it to do it. But for everybody to understand something, that health, let's define health as the optimal functioning of the organism. Right? Because a lot of people say it's the absence of disease, which is insane. That's like saying light is the absence of darkness, right? How much darkness would you have to take out of the room to find the light? It's an absurd question. So it's the opposite. What is called disease is the absence of health. So health is our birthright. It's the consequence of living within your biological constraints, your biological laws. And when they're all satisfied, the result is optimal functioning. And that's what we'll call health. So any deviation from that living your supplying your biological needs will be the deviation from health. So it's not that you didn't get something, it's just that you somehow, and I would like to simplify it. So therefore, if someone comes in with a consequence of the many years of not satisfying their biological needs, like a lump, high blood, whatever it is, if you have a little lump here, and it's just, you could just feel it, that took 8 years. So we don't have to do anything next Tuesday. Slow down. So if it took 8 years, now what are we doing? We have the allopathic mindset, which is, I'm going to get rid of this now. Well, you can't, and I'll tell you why. Well, don't believe me. Do it. Cut it out. Tell me if you're done. Call me a year later. It doesn't work that way. You have to, as long as it took what it took to get there, you have to go back and get back to that. So there's no such thing as it. So, we're used to, you go to the doctor, he gives you a pill, it gets rid of a symptom. Now, a symptom, remember, is our body talking to us. Right? So when I have pain, what's my body saying? Stop. Whatever it is, stop. All right? We have to understand that that's the message. So anyway, all I'm saying is it's hard to fast, but here's the thing. This is what you've got to do. You've got to say, okay, you remember Solomon in, I think it was Ecclesiastes. He said, to every season, every time there is a season, there's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to laugh and a time to cry. Well, there's a time to fast and there's a time not to fast. So if you're going to fast, you take it seriously. And I want to tell you that a fast is actually a spiritual experience. Now, the other thing to understand real quickly is that we don't have a mind, a body, and a spirit. We have a mind, body, spirit complex. Where does the mind end and the body begin? What is the body? The body's atoms, which is what? What's at the center of the atom? Oh, Nagasaki. Oh, so energy. So in other words, you can't, it's one being. And there's all aspects of it, and you have to deal with all aspects of it, right? So that's what I'm saying. It might seem daunting, but here's the final take-home message. There's only one way to get healthy. There's only one way to obtain health, and that's by living healthy. Okay, you can't command it, negotiate it, buy it. You can only earn it. It's like respect. Okay, so if you want health, you got to earn it. And to earn it means you've got to go back. Oh, you got to go back to eating. I always tell people, they go, how long do I have to eat this way? It's like I say, well, how long do I have to quit smoking? Right? Well, as long as I want to breathe. But why am I eating this way? Well, because it's called earth food. What do you mean earth food? Well, the earth actually produced everything we need. Hard as it is to believe, God made tomatoes, not tomato sauce. I know he screwed up a lot, but unfortunately he made tomatoes. He didn't make tomato sauce. And I guess, and by the way, if you chemically took it to a chemist, the tomato and the tomato sauce, you'd find out they're not chemically the same anymore. Okay, so anything that God makes is natural and nature is perfect. It's perpetual change, but it's perfect. And there's no waste. There's no garbage in nature. Every bowel movement is food for another organism or an excretion. It's beyond understanding. But that's nature. Now, when we get a hold of something and we make it, it's called artificial. That's why when archaeologists go on digs, they look for artifact. Something unnatural. Yeah, the humans were here. So we take stuff, and what do we produce? We have a lot of garbage. We make garbage. Right? Okay, so that's why I was saying, I was thinking that, God, what God produces is nature and it's perfect. I would call that intelligence. I guess it's time to go, huh?
I guess that's it.
That's the alarm. I guess I got to go. Anyway, I'd love to finish that sentence, but I can't. Thank you.
That was God getting you. He's like, hold on. Let him get it.
Stop. It's like, let me just finish that sentence. What was it?
You were talking about nature. You were talking about how, like, God is in the nature. There's
that's trash. It is. So God's intelligence produces something called nature, which is perfect. Our nature, our mind, our intelligence produces that which is artificial. That's artificial intelligence. That's AI.
Mm.
Now, our progeny, the AI we made, is a second clone. It's like it's a clone of a clone. But guess what? It only got one aspect. For example, if the machines are running and AI's instructions are to eliminate you, there's no negotiating. You know what I mean? You take that human element out of it.
Mm.
Anyway, so all I'm saying is I think we are artificial intelligence, and that's why you have to understand anything we do. I don't call the cook a cook. I call them a chemist. They're doing endothermic chemical reactions. Now, can I do that? No. And just like you pointed out, it's exactly right. I grew up every Sunday morning. I smelled the sauce mix. You know, I mean, and I ate all day. I was grabbing meatballs. My mother was slapping me. I mean, to me, that you know, and I can't today. I can't go in an Italian restaurant and smell it and be okay. So
you can't fast. You can't fast when
yeah,
you're sitting in that.
yeah.
Yeah,
So what I do is, you're gonna fast. You take it solemnly serious,
mm-hmm.
and you go somewhere where you're not going to be disturbed, and you read books on fasting. You read why it's going to be, why that it's not some it's you're not being it's not that you're not eating, but you are fasting. It's a different thing, because if you see yourself as not eating, it's a deprivation. But if you're reading these fasting books and you're realizing, wow, and guess what? God hardwired it into nature. No animal eats every day. They might eat for 2 days and not find food for 3 days. So they're always oh, by the way, an intermittent fasting by definition would therefore be if you fasted every Sunday or you fast every Tuesday and Thursday. But if you just eat healthy, in one day, you can't call it, because I could say, well, look, I fast until breakfast, and then I fast until lunch, and then I fast till dinner, so I'm intermittently fasting. In other words, that's a hard one to define if it's within one day. So,
well, it's also confusing with the word breakfast, because breakfast is just breaking fast.
Yeah. So when are you going to do that, right?
That's just when I start eating again from whatever I stopped from dinner to breaking my fast. That's what they call breakfast.
Exactly. That's your breakfast, right? And so it can be, and anyway. So, but the reason is we shouldn't eat all the time, and everything has to be cyclic. But we do, because of our modern world. We're eating every day, 3 meals a day, and the toxicity gathers quicker. We don't have time to get rid of it, because remember, you have X amount of energy. So if you're eating, your system is busy assimilating, and it's doing less cleaning. And it's only when you stop eating that it has a chance to clean. It's really simple. So usually, most people who eat late at night, they go to bed, they don't get enough sleep, but they're still absorbing until maybe the last 3 hours. So they only get 3 hours of benefit of that sleep. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons that God gave sleep to us is so we finally stop eating.
That may be a part of it. I think there's a lot to it, but it's definitely probably one of it. Stop eating.
Right. Yeah. Because remember, it's not only what you eat and when. It's the important thing about diet is the times you don't eat and what you eat, and also like mono diets. He ate just bananas and he was cured. He ate just okay, but remember, when you're doing a mono diet, it's not necessarily what you're eating; it's what you're not eating.
Mm-hmm.
So all the other junk he's not eating. That's a big deal.
This will probably get in the weeds, but it's very interesting with some of the things I see with people who do stay out of eating the bad. I actually just one of my guys who runs the spirit side element, the Warrior's Way. He's a doctorate in theology, and he saw a guy. I want to say it was in India, where he believed that the nutrients you get from the sun may be all you need, and so he didn't eat any food for over a year. It was like 400 something days, and he would just absorb the energy from the sun, and he was healthy. Like the sun was giving nutrients that he needed for his body to survive, and he didn't eat any food at all. And he was not like skin and bones. He was a very healthy guy. And it was a very interesting thing to see, the amount of discipline, but then also the results. there's a lot more. It's more complicated than we give it credit for. And this is where, like, the elements of this, where we do speak about, like, in the warrior's way, when I train this, what you're teaching aligns very much, because I learned that it's not just how you work out. And I learned it's not just what you read. And I learned it's not just, I see your housekeeping, go grab them. Just like,
I mean, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Fire alarm guys coming by.
Fire alarm?
Yeah, they're gonna check the smoke detectors.
Oh.
They'll be here.
Oh, okay. I guess that was real.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize.
Well, you don't have to apologize for fire.
Yeah, no, but I mean, anyway, maybe we should do a part 2 someday. So
let's do it. I love talking to you. I would love that. Yeah, I'm just going to finish out with just saying, I see that you've incorporated mind, heart, body, and soul all together, and the yin and yang of what it is. You talk about the tactics and the action, and then the behavior and the connection. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So anyway, these ladies, will you tell this lady you're on a podcast right now? It's a very important show.
This is a guy. He's telling me there's a fire alarm, and I have to.
Let's get him on the show. Listen, this guy's a hero. Let's put him on the show.
Put him on the show. Yeah.
This is the part where I hope you're on YouTube and you're watching.
All right, go ahead.
Oh.
All right. Dr. Lodi, we're so live it hurts. It's an honor to be able to hang with you. Yeah, we'll get to watch these guys save lives. Very cool.
Yeah, they're letting me stay. That's great. So you're right. You're right. Bringing it all together. You know why we have to bring it all together? Because it is all together.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have systems in our body. We don't have a cardiovascular system, because the right heart pumps to the lungs, and then it comes back to the left heart. So it's really the cardiopulmonary system. But if they don't have the kidneys, understand, there's only one system. It's the body. And guess what? There's not only one of us here. If I don't have a heart, I'm dead. If I don't have a liver, I'm dead. And if I don't have microorganisms in my body, I'm dead. So are they them or are they us? Right? So we have to understand
Isn't the answer yes?
Yeah.
The answers are yes on all of them. I also I enjoy the element of memories and the parts of us where we want to think that it's our brain. I actually talked to a guy who was a spirit medium, but he very much believed in God. And he's like, no, that's all there. They're really there. There's a real thing. Angels don't look like you think they do. They're not these beautiful big winged. They're very different. Like, they're different. And he said, you ever notice how there's a spirit world? He's like, well, your brain's an organ. They don't have brains, yet they have intelligence. He's like, well, do you think that your memories are stored in your brain? He's like, they're stored in your spirit. They're stored in your soul. And that's why there's past lives and things like this. Mm-hmm. It's very fascinating to watch the ideas of we are interconnected in very complex ways. And if I like the way that you said, to sum it up, and I think it's in all 4 areas. You have to work on your mind, your beliefs, and even take care of the breath work to keep your things working functionally. But take care of the body, and the body is the part where you're saying this is more of if you want to get healthy, live healthy. But this also goes the same way within the world I work in, where it's also an emotional thing too. And our guys are very, very much suppressing emotion to try to get through. And that stores. The suppression leads to expression at some point. And then you have to get into the spirit side and understand that there's a connection beyond what we understand. It doesn't mean you are right, wrong, or anything. At some point, you're not supposed to know. And Socrates, being the wisest man in the world, understood that the wisdom comes from, I don't know. And that makes me wise. And then makes me able to listen instead of get upset and run into today's societal weapons, which are blame, shame, and judgment, to try to tell you how you're bad for making me realize I don't know.
Exactly. And and that's what they very cleverly and purposefully decided. Think of the human being in the year 1900. A self-reliant person who read. They probably made their family. They made most of what they did. They took care of them. They were self-reliant. Now they had to. And if you told them you got to do this, they'd say, "Wait a minute. Let me ask about that." And they wouldn't do that. So they realized they had to turn us into consumers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the only way you can turn someone into consumers is to appeal to their vanity. So they made us vain, because I got to get the latest T-shirt for Nation M and whatever it is, and we
Or
became
convenience,
vain consumers.
convenience and belonging. Yeah.
Exactly right,
It's
and belonging. So they got us. So before they started the great hoax of 2020, they were prepared. It couldn't fail, and you saw.
It did not.
Listen, in two
It was
months
extremely successful.
they took down the planet in 2 months. Jesus, I mean, you tell me that wasn't well.
It
Yeah,
was if you look back at it, it was executed amazingly. And
you got to
even
you
the
got to.
psychology results, if you just watch how few people even had they showed no critical thinking skills. It
None.
was more than half of the population challenged to nothing.
Even
And
doctors
yeah, doctors too.
who
They
should have known. Who it
jumped
was right
right in.
there.
And any doctors that knew were considered misinformation.
Oh, and look at Richard. He's dead. Bouchard. Yeah, he's dead.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah, the
yeah.
ones who jumped right in, it's showing that that was a mistake. But it also showed how quickly, if you don't pay attention to the propagandas of fear, if you don't pay attention to challenging the belief systems, including both of us,
Hmm.
I think people who call both of us, you should be challenging for my competency and how I break curses and belief systems. And you should challenge Dr. Lodi in his competence and his ability to help you actually live healthy. You should challenge your gurus. And as soon as I have to put on my robe, hide behind my paperwork, and start putting curses on you, maybe you should be challenging
Right.
your gurus.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful what you put down here today. I would encourage anybody, if really get a notebook today and take notes on what you've put. You have put. I've just from my own research. This is thousands of years of information collected and gathered and even transposed in the way that you speak. It's much wiser than I think most will understand, and it's a blessing to be able to have had the time with you today.
No,
And
I'm telling you. I've interviewed by many people, but I don't think anyone who really has the depth that is able to. I'm able to feel like a peer. It's hard to find peers. When you've thought, because I grew up. I've read. I don't read people's opinions about stuff. I read the original documents.
mhm.
Right. I don't want to hear what someone's opinion about the Bible is. I'm going to read it 10 times. You know, and I've read.
I've got some friends for you that you'll very much enjoy.
Oh,
I've got a couple of my guys who I run it. I have a very high level guys in the Warriors Way. Tonight, actually, just if you have time, we train mind, heart, body, soul in the Warriors Way. And I'm in mind side. Mind and body is mostly my strong side. So I go into the deep work, the psychology, the philosophies. That's my side. And so I built the entire program, but I also lean in on the masters of their own side. So tonight is spirit side. I call it Jedi training, or they call it the Transformers group. And that's where they focus more spirit side. And the two guys that run that, both, have church hurt, if you will. So they don't go church is the answer, but one is a doctorate in theology and he knows his shit. And the other guy was a pastor of the Dead Sea Scrolls, also knows his shit. And so these guys both are like, it's the gathering that we create that creates church. So we are the church, and we don't need a building to do that. And we don't need somebody to tell you otherwise. And we really get into those deep conversations of surrender to find God. And I think you would find these guys very, very fun to talk to.
I would love it. What do you say tonight? But what time is that?
Let's see. It's a central time. I want to say it's 8 p.m. Central time.
And
so
on the website,
I'll send you. I can just send you a link. So I'll make sure you have it. They put a Zoom link up, and the guys all get together, and so it's all over the world. So guys get together everywhere. But you'll enjoy that. That's just this. Last night, for example, was body side. So I have two guys who are physical experts, and they get into the mindset of the physical parts. But one guy is one of the strongest men in the world. He professionally competes in strongman, and he's like number 26 right now in the world. And then the other guy is a cage fighter, UFC cage fighter.
Wow.
So those are my two health experts for, like, you want to get tougher? Here's which way do you want to go? bigger, stronger, faster, more agile, which one you want. And so it's neat to be able to have these gatherings of experts in different fields. And so I think you really enjoy some of the things that we do in the Warriors Way, because we take guys like you and we go, you should shut the fuck up and listen to this guy, because he's really saying stuff that would take you 10,000 books to get.
Right. With the work you're doing, actually, and the work I'm doing, it's exactly the same, but they're just a different context. Mm-hmm. But, like, for example, I have a kinesiologist that, as part of the team. I've got a master of yoga and meditation. I've got, and I got chefs, and I've got teachers, but so in terms of kinesiology, so. One of the things that we all get eventually is sarcopenia. That's where your muscles start to atrophy, and it really happens. And so it turns out that, and this was surprised me. I had to read the research to believe it. I would think an indication of longevity would be your cardiopulmonary health. You know what it is? Grip strength. Grip strength correlates with prognosis of any condition and long life. And it goes into the science and it proves it. Now, how do I improve my grip strength? By squeezing a tennis ball? No. Walking stairs. Your core body gets stronger, your grip strength gets stronger. So one of the things when patients come to, they join our program, we call them students, not patients. But when our students come, we do a grip strength on day one. And we're shocked. I get 81-year-old ladies that have a grip strength. It's just amazing. But that's what we work on. So did you know that 70 seconds of stair climbing increases your natural killer cell function 6 times? 70 seconds. So what we tell people is, imagine it was 7,000 years ago, or anywhere. What would you do all day? You'd be bending, moving, twisting, walking, carrying, lifting, and stuff like that, and you'd be moving. And when I went to Vanuatu, I knew what was coming. So I was out in Vanuatu like about 20 years ago, looking for some land. Anyway, the natives were taking us on hikes through the jungle. Now, these guys that were wearing just these cloths on the bottom and nothing else, right? And they didn't chatter amongst each other. They talked when they needed to. Their bodies when you looked at their bodies, you would think these guys go to the gym for sure. But they don't. It was living. The word exercise only became relevant if you were sedentary, right? And guess what? Freaking out for 2 hours in the gym is just as unnatural as sitting at the desk for 8 hours. They're equally unnatural. So what we do is we call them movement snacks. But he teaches people based on what they're doing. And like, for example, if you're just sitting in a chair, and you do this 5 times a day, you're sitting in a chair and you just get up to the count of 3. And then you go down to the count of 5. Do that 5 times, and do that like 3 times a day. It's an immune enhancing. But the other thing it does is, because you have to balance and steady, it maintains cognition. So your cognitive function with your movement. I'm just saying, everything you're doing, we do, and more. It's pretty amazing, but it's from a different perspective. And that's why I don't want to call the people that come to me anything but students. And we're all students of life. And that's what Socrates was saying. I need a teacher. So, yeah. So there's no. You're not a patient. You're not whatever they told you are. Get rid of that. Okay. And that's what we offer. It's called the School of Life, which is similar to what you're doing, or maybe the same, but just from a different angle.
You want to hear something that's also very reassuring? I've met a few people. I've been very blessed in that this kind of platform, which this is ironic that this is a hobby, no different than you right now. This is us just having a podcast. We're not podcasters. We really do real work.
Right.
And so this is kind of a neat thing where people will listen to a show. There's the alarm.
It's just a couple more times.
This is one of the most ironic shows I've done.
They're serious this time. I guess I gotta go. All right, so maybe there is a fire. I don't know. Listen,
Maybe there is.
we'll do.
Go be safe.
Thank you so much.
We'll be in touch. Let's do another one. I'll talk to you later.
Bye bye.